Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Overwatch Carbon Series. I'm Alex Gill, Frost Gill, once again joined by Andrew ZP Rush and Robert Hexagrams Kirkbride. ZP Hex, we're one game in, and so far I haven't messed up those names at all.
It's actually odd to hear my actual name. For the last year, I've just been Hex, and that's just been ZP. So,
I could shorten it. It would make it easier for me if you prefer.
For you. For you, we'll let it.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Well, either way, we are about to go underway with Luminosity Gaming facing off against Renegades, and the first match ended up going 3-0. And based on the roster changes and the strength of Immortal, a lot of us guessed that's how that would go. What are we expecting coming into this matchup straight away?
Actually, this one's a very difficult one to call. I feel that they're even teams. I think both of these teams are expected to do very well. And even with the recent stuff that has happened on the Renegades roster, I think the Renegades roster has done nothing but improve. Not so much recently, but previously, Luminosity had changed the roster, and I think they've improved. And I think the most recent patch probably helps both teams.
Well, it clearly helps Renegades because you take a look at Mangachu going all the way back to summer of last year. He is known as being one very, very good Pharah, and now Pharah's back in vogue. We kind of teased it a little bit talking about the usage of Pharah in the last matchup, but really, Renegades, Pharah is their bread and butter. Mangachu runs it quite a bit. And Renegades has, I feel like, been coming in pretty strong in recent times. I mean, they have revamped the roster. The patch has been good to them. And they recently picked up Saipe, who people might know as one of the better players from the old Citizen 7 squad, which is now RIP. But their success back in the NGE tournament really came from Saipe being a dynamic player. So I think the fact that Renegades is headed into the squad has definitely been a good thing.
Let's actually take a look at the squads right now. First of all, for Luminosity, and there you have it right there. Looking across this roster, I mean, we talked about Mangachu. Ube is another clear standout on Pharah. Maybe not quite as popular on that hero as Mangachu, but definitely has seen a lot of success. But what else do we see across that roster?
Ube is the jack of all trades. I mean, we don't have a graphic big enough to show his hero pool. He can play Pharah, he can play Mei, he can play Roadhog, and he will switch at will. At whatever he wants to switch, he will switch to whatever he feels like. I like Pluke a lot, Super Pluke. I think he's a great tank. They got him off of the ladder, and this roster has been in flux. Adding Hadan, I think, was a great thing as well. Icefeld has moments where he can be on that super high level of Tracer as well.
Well, Ube and Icefeld are probably the 2 points where you don't really know what you're going to get going into any given fight, because in Ube's case, he's the jack of all trades, probably has one of the weirdest overall hero pools in Overwatch in regards to what he plays and doesn't play. Meanwhile, you have Icefeld, where he can take over fights, but doesn't do it with the regularity you'd expect. And talking about players right now, we'd be doing a grave disservice if we didn't talk about Spree, who, in many people's eyes, has been one of the biggest rising Zaryas in the game. Very consistent progress on him. Although it doesn't always play Zarya the way that you expect from other Zaryas, tends to be very aggressive in people's faces and usually at high energies. So he's an entertaining player to watch and definitely an X factor on this LG squad.
One of the better Zaryas definitely in North America and possibly in the game. And you do see that between Hadan as a very strong Ana player, the split in these fights is sometimes Spree pushing forward farther than almost any Zarya goes, and Hadan holding down things on the back end, and then all through and through, that's oftentimes how they win fights. I also am really excited to see how this question of the damage dealers comes to fruition in this game, because, as you said, Ube and Icefeld are a little bit of a question mark. We're going to find out soon. Do you have a final point there?
Well, it's a lot of the problems that they've had is when Icefeld is not on Tracer and Ube is on Tracer, and a lot of people just knowing that these teams the way they do, I've questioned that. Are you not communicating well enough on your swaps? Is it really coordinated enough where you're putting the right people on the right heroes when they need to be there?
Certainly.
Well, we're going to find out here in a bit, but let's change gears just a little bit. Take a look at Renegade's roster as they are going to be coming into this matchup as the home team. And similar in some ways, you can see a few similar heroes, but let's walk through this roster a little bit there.
Well, you know, it's the Rocket Queen's world, and we're just living in it, and I could not be happier about it. Mangachu, of course, the old Pharah, has always played Pharah when she's in vogue or not. In that regard, he is a Pharah specialist. If he has his druthers, he can play it. However, his projectile players otherwise, his Mei, for instance, is one of the better Meis to look at, and also Jesus is really good as well on that DPS.
Certainly, and the roster there was a little bit out of date. Of course, Saipe is now with Renegades, and I think it's worth noting that Renegades really does have a true triple triple threat in terms of DPS if they want to run it. Now, we haven't seen them run it as often as you might expect, but if teams do like running that more, which certainly we've seen from LG on certain points, you have the case where you can run Mangachu, Jesus, and Saipei in that role and really cause chaos for the other team.
I think that is where the future of Overwatch rosters is heading, as evidenced by how well Cloud9 has done with that roster, adding in someone who is traditionally known as, well, okay, whatever. You know what I mean. Someone who is traditionally known as a DPS, you add them on there so that they can run your off tank on occasion, so they can run your Roadhog and things like that. Mangachu can run a Roadhog, Jesus can run a Roadhog. Of course, I'm speaking of gods can run a Roadhog. Yeah, all right.
Yeah. And two other aspects of that I want to bring in. Well, Jesus, maybe in the X factor in this matchup is McCree, bringing that. And then I have to bring it up. In recent history, this last weekend, we did see Mangachu on that Bastion. And guess what? The first map of the day is actually King's Row, and this is where we saw it. So are we going to see it again?
The odds of anyone picking Bastion is lower than the odds of Mangachu picking Bastion. That's as far as I'm willing to take that, is that he has played Bastion more than other people. Mangachu does what he wants.
Yeah.
Like, honestly, and he always has.
You said that about Ube, and I'm like, well,
it's got him into trouble a little bit on rosters here and there, but he plays what he wants.
It also creates some certain roster questions here, because when you see a McCree come out from Renegades, a lot of time you see it come out from Mangachu, and problem with that is I still think Jesus might be the better McCree player of the two, so it doesn't always make as much sense. But Mangachu doing things like Bastion, that goes way back to his NG Red days where he used to play it on points. Certainly, there's a point where many teams tried it, running it on Nepal Village and stuff like that. So not too surprising overall. I guess we'll see where things go.
And it may have to do with who's really feeling it on that day. And so having two McCrees isn't necessarily terrible for you, but a little bit going on behind the scene, especially because they can play a lot of other people.
I will bring a sports adage into it, though. If you have two McCrees, you don't have any. Generally, you need one player who is like your McCree. Like, if you have two quarterbacks, you don't have one, right?
Yes, okay.
I don't know. I mean, I guess, we can discuss this later.
All right.
No. I'm going to see a diagram if you have two McCrees
it's a
equals
saying.
0 McCrees.
Come on, it's a saying.
It's a saying? All righty. I'll go with you then. Well, let's actually take a look at the players to watch coming into this matchup. First, for Luminosity, not the first Ana player that we've seen as a player to watch. It is going to be Hidan, the one that we're going to be watching. And we've titled Hidan, in this case, an enabler for this roster.
Hidan's heroics go all the way back to E-League, where he really made his name on that Misfits roster, where he very arguably denied Rogue what could have been a huge tournament victory, because what did we see from him in an era where we didn't really know quite what Ana was capable of? Came in with one of the most on-point sleep darts of all time to finish out a map. And in general, Hidan is one of the hardest Anas to kill in the game. He will oftentimes win one-on-ones in the backline. He's scarily consistent. And when people think of great Ana play in Overwatch, you have to look towards Hidan.
Completely agree. However, I think that he could be the weak point, the glowing spot on the beast, if it were. Like, when you're going against this team, if you can get to Hidan, a big if, of course, then the rest of the team can kind of fall around it. And you spoke earlier about the gulf that happens between Ube going forward sometimes and even Spree going forward sometimes. That puts a lot of pressure on your Ana to be able to keep sightlines and be able to keep them. So they do have to communicate and have that coordination going. And oftentimes we'll see that Spree will push far forward and they'll ignore and just fight in the gulf between Spree and Hidan. So they have to keep their distances manageable.
Watch for that coming into this matchup. On the other side of things, Renegades, player to watch. We've already talked about him quite a bit. Mangachu himself. So we've gone over it a little bit, but if you had any final thoughts, why is Mangachu the player to watch coming out of Renegades?
I think a lot of it is just practice on Pharah. I mean, he's played it probably more than everyone else has played Pharah. It's his favorite hero. He's played it since day one of beta, and his mobility on Pharah is absolutely unquestioned. He uses concussion blast great to get in position, and essentially, he doesn't miss rockets that often, and he can run it with a Mercy and keep his Mercy alive because he's very mindful of positioning, and he can run it without it because he's very mindful of his own positioning.
No doubt about it. And the other thing, too, about Mangachu is that you can tell just by how Renegades plays around Mangachu, they're oftentimes giving him a heck of a lot of support, regardless of what support heroes they might be running. A lot of their offense is based around how do we get Mangachu in there, and how do we really set the stage. And even as a Pharah, if a case where, say, maybe you do hit a long-range rocket, that can be the signal to go for your offense. So for Renegades, when they do run that, they do just sort of set around Mangachu, for better or for worse.
Well, we are about ready to get into game, and once again, it is Kings Row. So coming into Kings Row, we talked a little bit about some of the strengths of these teams off camera, but we didn't talk much about Kings Row. What are we expecting out of these teams? I mean, I think Farah, transition straight in from there. We're probably going to see Farah. What else are we expecting from these teams?
If Farah weren't so in vogue, I would say that don't sleep on Mangachu's Mei. Mei used to be very good on the defense here in a lot of situations. I do expect both teams to run the Farah. Specifically, I expect Ube to run it offensively and defensively on every single point.
Yeah, Ube, he very well could run it, and I think on Kings Row it'd be more likely based on past footage we've seen, although Ube at times can be a free spirit. We could see him on Roadhog, of course, where we haven't talked about as much of it, but he's very, very decisive on that hero, has been explosive in the past. So LG is just interesting because they swap up on their roles so often that you don't always know what they're going to go into from game to game, but we are going to find out here because next game should be on the way.
Yeah, go ahead and take it away. Here we are on to Kings Row.
Alrighty, Heck. So Kings Row going to be our first map here in the series. Will be Renegades on the defense, and they're already showing defensive Farah.
Yeah, that's kind of exactly what they've always run here. I think that of all things, we will see the oldest combination in all of Overwatch from day one of closed beta. In the streets of Kings Row, gravitons into barrages. It's somewhat is a staple. It's the first thing that you and I ever witnessed as the first true combo. But I don't think that they're going to be running Icefeld on the Widow. Maybe. He's got a really interesting pool on Hitscan and something that you can run for maybe 30 seconds or so on offense, so that wouldn't surprise me. I guarantee you Hadan will not be playing Junkrat.
Now, one thing I find interesting on this defense here, Hex, is that it's not relying on anything like a builder hero like Symmetro Twerp. It's going to be a very divey defense because you have Jesus here in the Tracer, Saipei on the Winston, and Mangachu coming in over the top as Farah. So even though they're still running the Reinhardt, it feels like this is going to be one very aggressive, counter-punching Renegades defense.
I feel like it's a scouted defense that they know exactly what Luminosity wants to run. They know that Luminosity likes to run the double flanker with a Farah in it too, and that's why the Winston's there to maybe shut down Icefeld and Ube on the Genji and Tracer.
Well, speaking of LG swapping up on roles, it will be Spree coming in here on the Farah, not Ube in this particular instance. And the defense, Juvenile able to roll in, gets both supports with a swing of the hammer. But look at this, Super Pluke in the back line has gotten both supports on the Renegade side, so both teams relatively even, but this has to favor the offense, X, with how quickly they get back into this fight.
Kings Row, of course, one of those maps that the spawn difference is enormous, so trading out on offense is always a great thing, but Mangachu is going to equalize. Saipei actually put in a ton of work on that Winston, softening everyone up, doing all of that damage. One of the questions I would have on this defense, though, is who's going to be there for the killing blow. That should very likely be Jesus.
And this is interesting because LG, they weren't able to regroup quick enough. They're going to take this next attack slower, which means that any benefit they had from those early kills should be gone. Renegades will be able to fully establish here, and now we're looking at Ube. Ube flanking in from the backside, just getting in on Winston, perhaps not the best target given that matchup, and he just falls immediately. Not great target selection coming out there from Ube, and this is going to let Renegades stabilize their defense even more, Hex.
I gotta say, I love Saipei on the Winston because you can do so much damage with the Farah, but you do need people to chase down those kills. Now, traditionally, we think of that as perhaps Tracer's role. That's why Jesus on that. But Winston is great at the chase and kill because he's got such a large pool. He's always in position to do so.
And now look at Jesus right now. He is in, waiting for the flank. He just wants to blink forward and stick the pulse bomb on anything that moves. This can be a big tool in buying more time here. But no, he takes a rocket right to the face, has to back out. This ambush not going to happen. Will get healed up, though, so the defense still in a fine position, just not going to win it with a big pulse bomb. But as we see here, LG is committing. They are going in. They are past the gateway. They're back at the statue right now. And Saipei, though, gets on both supports again. It's going to be very rough for the offense to win on this push.
It's just very odd to see that as Saipei on it because, of course, we have a limited history with him knowing that he just plays Genji, and very rarely do you hear people say, I mostly play Genji and Winston. Not a phrase you hear very often.
They're not two heroes that really like each other that much, just on a gameplay sort of level. Genji really likes keeping his distance from everyone's favorite scientist, but Now time's starting to run down. Only a minute 30 left here for this LG squad, Hex.
They do have a couple ults to work with. Icefeld has switched onto the Reaper. That is how serious the threat of Saipei's Winston has been. They go to the hard counter as Ube tries again here. Very likely a Dragon Blade coming up momentarily, but on the other side, there's a Dragon Blade pop as well, I think. No,
what an Earthshatter coming down here from the side of Renegades. Juvenile drops a hammer, sets it for 3 kills, and even though they've lost some members here, Spree was able to take down Mangachu. He falls immediately, and there's enough people left alive here for the Renegades team that they will re-solidify Hex, and this is going to bring LG down to their last 1 to 2 pushes here.
Yeah, Ube just suicided into that as well, and apparently I just wanted him to pop the Dragon Blade, as no Dragon Blade did go off that fight. He will have it for the next fight as well, but that is it. That's all they've got with 50 seconds left to push.
Ube is definitely going to be the one to watch going into this next fight. Will he be able to use this Dragon Blade to put his team over the top? He won't have a nano boost or any shenanigans with it. He's got to make his own luck. Goes to that back line, trying to get in here on Sherlocky, but no, Sherlocky, the embarrassment, takes down Ube. Oh my goodness, Hex, not like this. Renegades looking like they very well could be full holding.
We have seen some amazing Ana plays so far in this tournament. In this young first day of this tournament, it has been Ana's paradise so far, as Mangachu is just going to be on the cleanup, on the chase. Mangachu's played a very passive Pharah this entire game, just kind of hanging out in the window.
It's defensive poking Pharah, and it's not necessarily typical, but it has been working out here. LG moving in. Final attempt on the point. Mangachu now taking the time to strike, going into the back line. It's him and Saipei just annihilating supports in the back. Will it be enough? Ana will fall. Mangachu, 52 HP. Not the greatest, but still not attacked right now. Will get healed up, and now we'll see if Renegades can just clear out the last few attackers here to secure this point A hold.
A very late sound barrier keeps most people alive, as they will get the numbers on here. Mangachu still trying to get something going. He's a rocket away from a barrage, but he is only down to 10. He gets cleaned up by Spree with the late switch onto the 76. They look to be bringing this back. Maybe they can get this point, all the kills in favor of Luminosity right now.
Now, in regards to that, I feel like Renegades pushed a little bit too far out there. They were winning that fight. They had respawns coming in, and instead of really holding back to get more respawns in and take that cleanly, they went out, they lost their front line, and it didn't matter. So LG is going to be able to stay alive, at least for a little bit longer here, Hex.
Even earlier than that, the dive defense composition simply took too long to get their job done. They went in with the Winston, they got the Pharah in the back line, but it took them way too long to kill the supports. And by the time they had the fight behind them had already taken place.
All right, well, Mangachu will be rejoining this fight. Barrage is on the menu, and we'll see just what he does to stop this LG defense. Jesus holding up over top, but there's the Earthshatter in from Juvenile, gonna knock down 3, and Mangachu might be able to hold on to Justice, just give it a side of rockets instead. And this is gonna be a hold here from Renegades, continuing to push up heavily on this defense.
Who needs justice when you have the fist of justice right there, as Mangachu finishes the kill with a punch. You don't see Pharah's melee very often, so it's always nice to see. He's be able to hold on to that barrage. His positioning here, just waiting for them to come down over the top. He's lived in that window on defense on first point, still living in the window right now. Great position to hold.
Well, off the top rope, as it were. There's a nano boost. There's the barrage. That is not the rain you want to be in as a Reinhardt. He just got soaked by rockets, and this should be, well, it might be a defensive hold here because the offense is able to back out. It's both sides losing 2, and the offense might have a period here where they can have a 6v4 Hex that lets them get through at least the second part of second.
I think, knowing Luminosity, they should continue to fight. They like long, drawn-out, scrappy fights, and Icefeld was getting in there. Spree with being super aggressive. Spree and Icefeld taking some very forward position here as they clean up Jesus as well. So they just flipped the switch, and that's what Luminosity is capable of doing. All fight, they can be poking, prodding, then they just hit it into turbo. That's what they did right there, chasing down those kills.
And now for LG, they don't really have a whole lot of time to work with here, Hex. They're still under a minute. This is still a must-win fight for them. And Saipei is going to be coming in with the charged-up grab, so they need to get an early kill here. If they get stuck in this grab, it's going to be bad. There's Super Fluke. Drops the hammer, knocks down 1. We'll see if he can get fall through. The defensive graviton, though, is out. Ube moving in, and Jesus moves in. A double kill pulse bomb, and Jesus might be the one to move this in. The pulse bomb set up by that graviton, and now it's looking like Renegades will be stopping LG right here before second.
Playing with their food, as they will not let Hidan die. A very purposeful stagger there, so even if there was someone alive to be able to touch the card for Luminosity, maybe they can do it, but not in a great spot. That will be a hold before second for the Renegades defense.
And honestly, LG is pretty lucky that they were able to even get through first and get it as far as they did, because Renegades was looking very well poised to have that first point hold.
It was kind of our curse, I think, in a very small way. We talked about how Mangachu had been very patient, holding back, just doing poke, and the moment we did, he turns around, concusses a wall, and goes deep diving. Him and Winston had the right targets. It was a great idea. They were able to get the supports eventually, but it took them 1 or 2 rockets too long, and that could be the difference. By the time they'd gotten the kills, the front line had already been evaporated, and they were unable to wrestle the point back.
Now, for Renegades, how does it affect your offense when you know that you don't have to bring it all the way? You know that you just have to get first and a little bit in the second. Well, it's really just most of second, but even still, they don't have to worry about last. So does this affect what sort of strategy they come in with as an offense?
I think perhaps that's more applicable to a pure escort map. But in these hybrid maps, let's just worry about first. Let's get that done, and then we can maybe take our time and run a different composition. But I think you're not going to change up your strategy on your first offense anyway, because you have to get that point before anything else matters.
All right, well, we're seeing the defense of Luminosity come out here, and Hex, this is about as standard could be. I mean, we saw a whole lot of this in the last patch here, where it's going to be a 3-tank setup, Ana, Lucio, and 76. And I feel like a linchpin to this, too, is going to be Icefeld and how much he can get done on the back. We've seen soldiers make or break teams in this type of composition.
The few times that he was dueling Mangachu, he did get the better of it. Of course, Mangachu had taken damage earlier in those engagements as well, but Icefeld was on the cleanup dealing with Mangachu, and I think they know, just knowing Renegades, that Mangachu is going to be running the Pharah. So you have to run Icefeld on 76, and he's proven that he is a very good hit scan player.
But is Icefeld going to be enough if Mangachu's getting a whole lot of support and you have this crazy dive coming in? Because I feel like Icefeld just might be using his sprint a lot more than his actual primary fire.
Well, he's not going to be getting a super amount of support, though, not even an Ana here. He might get the orb, but that is a little lesser amount of healing than an Ana or a Mercy would. We will see this, a very damage-oriented offense coming out for Renegades.
Oh my goodness, Jesus getting taken down immediately. The early push and not what he's looking for, but Icefeld under pressure. Barely able to get away from Mangachu there. Mangachu not able to finish his plate, and he's just going to get taken out as a result. That could have gone another way, but really, when Jesus went down that early, difficult to bring it back.
Simply not hitting the rocket that he needed to. If that soldier gets the biotic field down, you're already in trouble. Icefeld sprinting his way out and then got his revenge there too. So a very nice first hold there. But now Renegades knows what they're up against. They obviously knew that Icefeld was going to be up in that corner. Look at that. Mangachu wants the window back regardless. Offense, defense, no matter what. He wants to live in that window.
He has set up shop there. He pays rent, and he is going in over the top to Icefeld and immediately getting gunned down. It was supposed to be him and Jesus in on Icefeld, but they're not able to seal the deal. 2 unanswered kills here by LG, and this offense is going to be thrown back.
Well, Saipe has been rather quiet so far, but I think that will change during this next fight as he is at 85% on his Dragon Blade. One of the problems is, though, that's going to be a rather solo Dragon Blade. No great support, no bubble. They may sound barrier, but Jur's very far away from that, so he's going to have to work a miracle with this.
All right, we're going to see Renegades take another look at this. Saipe does have the Dragon Blade up and at the ready, and that might be the X factor that they need here. It's been a relatively quiet game for Saipe, and as I say that, Hedan wins that fight against him. That's the power of Hedan that we talked about pre-game, and this is going to be 3-0 to start things out here from LG. Renegades gonna have to back up and regroup once more as Jesus now is deep in the backfield. He's not dead, he's just on a trip to the pub.
These Ana players continue to impress me across the board. We've seen 4 of them tonight, and we've seen 4 spectacular defenses, self-defense class Ana in full sessions right now. Mangachu does have the barrage. The window is empty. He's going to find someone to lay it down.
Well, he lays it down, but he's the one who ends up getting put down in the end. It's Ube taking him out of the air. Justice not really on the menu in that particular fight. And this is now getting dangerous here for Renegades, Hex. Only 1:45 left for them to take first, and I feel like this has been a recurring theme, perhaps, if this happens again, where Renegades had a great defense, but they might have a better defense from LG.
Well, wholesale changes happening on the side of Renegades as Saipe off the Genji, Juvenile now on Reinhardt, Mangachu switches over to the Roadhog. They know they need beef on the ground because Icefeld has been shredding these squishies.
Icefeld, he's had a great game, and we're going to start out here with the Earthshaft from Superpluke. Don't know if it knocked down many, but he does find Mangachu after the result of that, so now it's 5v5 here. Not the worst opening from the offensive spree. Drops the Graviton, not able to get too much follow through on it. Looking here for the Tracer. Still kind of getting the runaround. So the offense of Renegades, probably the best opportunity they've had in quite a while here, Hex. But LG's still alive and on this point, so it could go either way.
LG participates in some of the longest fights I've ever seen, and sometimes it works out for him, sometimes it doesn't. But now the kill feed turning red with the blood of their enemies. Jesus and Mangachu both down to Ube and Icefeld. Icefeld continues his spree, haha, as he gets a couple kills. Hidan chimes in as well, and that is another hold. It is getting down to it. As good as the Renegades defense was, they're about to be one out.
This is brutal if you're Renegades, especially after that good defense where you almost have first point hold. Well, LG might be teaching a class in how to get that first point hold. It all comes down to this here for Renegades. They must find a way of breaking through. Juvenile has Earth Shatter up. Saipei pretty close to Graviton. Juvenile gonna force the Earth Shatter. Not quite what they were looking for early on, but Ana has fallen as a result. 5v5. Juvenile's life is gone. Icefeld with the tac visor in the back line, not able to really get the sight lines he's looking for. And there's the Graviton from Renegades. Pulls in 3. Renegades swarming on top of that. They only get the Lucio kill though here, Hex, as Icefeld has yet to be touched.
In theory, it was a really smart rotation to go through that hotel to make it more difficult for Icefeld to get the damage done, making every target further away, but he rotates through, keeps himself alive. Ube on the Tracer will clean it up as well, and a magnificent defense from Luminosity on King's Row.
Well, second verse, same as the first, Hex, as far as it's going with matches earlier in the day where we were very impressed with how Complexity had a very good defense, and yet they ended up losing to a better defense. And we have more of the same here where Renegades was looking pretty darn good, but LG a bit better.
They stayed on the very aggressive dive for perhaps a little too long. I liked the rotation towards the end. We'll see if this play from Jesus. This has to be that pulse bomb.
Graviton comes in, sets up Jesus, and he just dines on the opportunity. Very straightforward Big Bang combination, but one that we thought was potentially going to be giving Renegades the map. Unfortunately, LG's defense just a little bit too tough to handle.
Well, I'm back, and what a game. I not to shift too much, but you were talking about this, the differences in defenses, because they were very starkly contrasted on first. Both of them were very successful, but as you'd mentioned, one was more successful. And so I wanted to talk about that a little bit. First of all, in general, we've been seeing a shift towards aggressive, even dive defenses. So walk me through that. Why are we seeing more of that these days?
I think a lot of it is knowing just how important those supports are in the back lines. And a lot of it is you can run a dive defense versus a dive offense, because a Winston's still going to be good against a dive offense should they come in. We saw how successful Saipei was, just absolutely getting so much damage done early and then the follow through. I think running Winston with a Pharah is also really good too, because as I mentioned, it's so good on the chase. You know, if you're going to run a defensive Pharah, there's a lot of times where you hit a rocket and someone's got 3 health and it kills you if they get around the corner. But you can just send Winston after him because his cooldown on the jump is very, very low, so he's able to chase down targets.
Now, to the other side of that, and why we saw LG running something more standard there, as I mentioned in the opening, a lot of it does depend on what is your DPS going to do. Icefeld was the real main punching power for LG on their defense, and it really depended on him being able to evade all the multiple assassination attempts on his life. And guess what? He did. He stayed alive, regardless of what Mangachu threw at him, regardless of Jesus trying to jump him, Saipei trying to get in. He was the player who would not die, and as a result, those dives did not work. He stayed in laying in the damage, and LG, they ended up winning it because Renegades did not have a good answer to him.
And when you run a 76, it kind of takes the target off the back of your supports too. Mangachu can't just go in and take down the Ana, because if he ignores your 76, you're just dead. So immediately it makes sure that Mangachu has to deal with 76 first, unable to do so.
There were several dives early where Saipei was diving in, getting the kill on Hidan when they were, when they were on defense. But then you saw when they were on offense, the Pharah combo trying to get into the back with Tracer getting in to try to get this little small death ball of, healing death ball with Soldier and Ana. And it's like they couldn't pick their targets. They couldn't get enough damage across, and Icefeld just cleaned them up. Well, we are going to be moving, shifting onto Hanamura. This is the second time we're going to see this map tonight. Any final thoughts, I guess, on King's Row before we move on?
No.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like, honestly, most of it was covered, and it really was a story of defense.
Right.
And so I'm sure we'll be able to pick that more up, pick that apart a little bit more as we continue to analyze. But let's talk a little bit about the next map, map number 2. So the first one, by the way, was selected by the victor. Luminosity was the one that selected King's Row, which is going to leave it over to Hanamura being selected by Renegades.
So going to Hanamura now, the question is that if you're Renegades, how much faith do you have in your Pharah going forward? Because I think this plays a little bit into last map analysis, but Pharah has been having a resurgence, but now you're also a little bit predictable, right? If you're Renegades, you know that Renegades is going to be coming in with the Pharah more often than not, and clearly they had a pretty good answer to that. So maybe Renegades was coming in here with a Pharah strategy on Hanamura. Certainly she could be very effective here, but after you fail to get anything done for King's Row first, I just wonder if that shakes your game plan just a little bit.
Yeah, I completely agree. One thing I always talk about Pharah is run it until they prove they have an answer. Well, Icefeld proved he has the answer right there. However, I think this map is also very good for Mei. And Mangachu has shown that he can play Mei. It's very good for Mei on offense and defense. You can run her on first point and second point, and she becomes very useful. Ice walls on this map, just to gain entrance and to block off the other team, could be huge. And yeah, as you mentioned, Mangachu can't feel great about what happened to him versus Icefeld.
Yeah, and I was going to say, and on second with that Mei on Hanamura, that's a really tough point to get from an offensive perspective unless you really get that full team wipe, and Mei makes it so hard. Right. And with that Blizzard potential coming out here. Another thing that I want to bring up is something that Renegades has shown us in the past is that double builder. So you try that aggressive offense with the Pharah, with the Winston. Do you maybe opt for, on point number one, the double builder? Because we have seen that on first Hanamura.
They've definitely run double builder. I think of it more associated with Hollywood and even Dorado than anything else. But
we also don't see very much Hanamura, right? Like,
right. It's very difficult to translate it.
I would say the double builder is a fair guess here for what we know Renegades likes running. And also, it's something that is a curveball to the other team. There's something to be said for strategies where even if they aren't the absolute most powerful, if the opponent really hasn't dealt with it as much or it's just hitting a weak spot in their preparation, maybe you get more success than you would with the more traditionally powerful composition.
I would hedge my bets and say I would go single builder because I think Symmetra is really good on first point for Renegades, and they've shown that they like running Symmetra, and I do still think that Mei is extremely viable on this map. However, with teams running more of a dive comp, it becomes less powerful to run a Mei to block the wall because all these heroes with verticality can get in, but I would be a little bit surprised, actually, if we don't see either team running Symmetra because they've both shown proclivity to do so.
Well, we're going to have to see here. But I'm already enjoying this series a lot. A lot of fun, interesting switches. And I'm curious to see, especially how Renegades adapts. After losing map number one, changing maps entirely, really going to open them up to potentially outbaiting their opponent, as has been mentioned earlier on the desk. I think we're about ready to get into game. So without further ado, I think I'll leave it over to you guys to make the calls as this action-packed night continues.
Alrighty, well, thank you, Gil. As mentioned, we are heading into Hanamura, and this is where Renegade's going to be looking to strike back and even up the series 1-1 after, again, it was not a bad defense from Renegades on King's Row. They just ran into a brick wall.
Brick wall is how you could describe Hanamura first for a great while. There was such an era where we saw only Mei's run, just consistently on defense you run a Mei, but honestly, Hanamura is not a terrible map to run a Bastion too. I know we teased maybe Mangachu on the Bastion, maybe we're getting a little bit ahead of ourselves, but I think you could see a great variety of things. You generally expect the defense to not full hold first point, but now I don't know what to expect given the defenses that we've seen here tonight. So what do we see coming out for the defense, which will be Luminosity first?
Well, we are seeing at least one builder. Everyone's favorite Swedish builder, the one and only Torbjorn, will be out and at the ready. Will not be flanked by a Symmetra, but a turret definitely can create trouble for dive compositions where it's just another obstacle that you have to worry about as you go in, and while you're spending time on that, guess what? You're not looking at Icefeld, and Icefeld is going to have more room to look for you. Also, Ube is on Roadhog, where we know he can be very explosive, so Mineral is there. They have to consider the turret, but they also have to do that in contribution while looking at the other big DPS threats on this LG squad.
I'm a little surprised that Mineral's on the Torb instead of Symmetra. I guess that is just preference. He does play both for them when they do rotate off onto a single healer. So like our previous iteration of this map, we will have a single healer in Sherlocki, the world on his shoulders. Sorry, or single healer in Hidan, rather, world on his shoulders. Other than that, rather standard. Icefeld on the 76. It's coming a case where I think Icefeld's going to switch on 76 until someone forces it off him. That's how well he played last map.
I mean, use it until they prove you can beat you. That's That's my mantra on that, and the mantra of many. So let's take a look at Renegades, though, as they move in. They are running the offensive Widow. Jesus looking for the happy little pick. Will get the headshot on the Roadhog, but not a kill early on. Still looking for it, and he's hunting for Icefeld. This is a matchup that, in theory, can be very good for the Widowmaker, but he's going to have to land the shots as he is being chased back to start things out here. But we'll see if Renegades can find a way in.
A great support from his Ana there to keep him alive and back, being a threat here. I've always said that Widow can be a threat without firing a bullet, just changing the sightlines there. And look, they all have to fight in the corner there. The only person who can poke is the desuited Devo, but meanwhile, Superblock has gotten a couple kills. Mangachu finds Hidan in the backline, and we mentioned that can be a game-changing kill against Luminosity.
Well, Spree thought he was going to be getting back into his mech, not happening. And there's going to be a brief moment of power play here where the offensive Renegades can really put LG on the back foot. And this is their window right now, Hex. They're moving in, and down goes Icefeld. The problem has been taken care of, and it's looking like Point A should be able to roll the way of Renegades here in just a moment.
One of the purest counters to a 76 is simply outranging him with a Widowmaker. Jesus with a nice couple of kills there, and also making a lot of damage early on, making his presence felt as the Widow, making sure that the battlefield is changed to his liking. So much so he's going to switch on it. I think it's a great switch for this, to stay on even for last.
Well, right now, this is where momentum matters. Renegade's going to be looking for a quick strike to get point B and not be stuck fighting it for the next 7 minutes, but he takes down Ana immediately. Hidan is dead. Mangachu gives his life, but Saipei, Dragon Blade, unleashed in the back, has taken down Mineral. No supports up now for LG as Renegades tries to make the most of this. They need to get on the point, though, Hex, because respawns will be coming in soon. And oh, what a shot. What another shot! Jesus going off.
That's his name. That's not an expletive, just to describe how great that was. Mangachu is going to bust out the Bastion, try to solidify this. It's great when you already have it. He died very early, going to come back, and it's going to be a lockdown. Jesus on the point, Bastion in the back line. This is going to be brutal. Can Luminosity get a kill to stall this out?
Well, surprise, Bastion has entered the house right now. It's going to carve through that Reinhardt shield early on. This is some serious momentum coming in from Renegades. They have 2 ticks, Hex, here, and now Icefeld going to try and bring it back. He gets the nano boost onto him, has grabbed 2. He has been the problem, and down goes everyone's favorite robot as Icefeld picks up 4, and he will be the savior of LG on this point where things were looking like they could have ended pretty abruptly there. But still, 2 ticks that early, Hex. Not a bad opening for Renegades.
Not bad at all, but Icefeld, savior right there to bring it back with 4 kills of his own. That was such a cool switch from Mangachu to try to bring it back. But Jesus, there's no reason to get off of this Widow. He has proven extremely effective to it. And when the biggest problem for you has been a 76, there's really no better counter than a good Widow.
No, not in the least. And they have to prove that they can take out Jesus and make him be uncomfortable on this Widow, or at least get to a point where he's not getting reliable pickoffs, because right now he's public enemy #1 to Icefeld. Icefeld now has to play more defensive. He has to watch sightlines because Widow can ruin it, and they have a D.Va dedicated to him. He's just going to give him the slip here, goes for the shot on Icefeld, doesn't land it, looking for it, has 1. And now Icefeld will force him back. Was not able to land what he was looking for, but look at that! Saipei with the Dragon Blade on the point, still causing chaos as everyone's worrying about Jesus. We'll see if LG can hold it. That self-destruct probably will do it, but it was close.
As long as you've got a little bit of kills for the defense there, but it is looking like it might turn back around as Shorelocky is using his sniper rifle to get some damage done too, adds a 3rd kill onto the D.Va mech as well. Jesus continuing to try to get some damage on, but he's got to be careful and not die here. Really, the push is over. He's got to regroup.
And I will ask you this here, Hex. When you do have momentum, how scary is the Widow here on this ledge where you're down people, you can't really chase it, and she's still dominating sightline?
It's terrifying to even leave spawn, especially because they don't necessarily, when you're trying to get to a point when it's a stall-out chaotic situation, you can't leave spawn behind your Reinhardt every time, so you're just running out, and if she's got wall hack, she's just going to not let you get out there. Icefeld does take down Saipei, though, with a really nice Helix rocket, and they've gotten decent positioning back on this defense.
And that's the problem there. Saipei was looking for a little bit of poke on the side to get Dragon Blade up. Unfortunately, runs into a very angry Icefeld. And now, this is rough here for an offense, Hex, because of the nature of having the flawless victory at final point. When the defense has 4 ultimates, you really need a Junk Rush or 2 to soften it up.
I completely agree. Junk Rush being go in, don't use ults, make sure they use ults. There are a couple ults out for the side of the defense, so far rather successful as long as the offense doesn't burn any ults in turn. I would be stunned to see Shorelocky and Mangachu blow it up, but they feel they have the advantage. But Mangachu is going to use his ultimate.
Well, they do use it. Jesus is in position in over the top. He's already taken down 2, so this is an unchecked Widowmaker. Despite losing players early on, despite not even having an ult advantage, this is a case where Renegades is committing. And I'm going to note, Jesus is still up, still sniping, still looking for pickoffs, but he is under pressure. Finally goes down to the D.Va, and LG, they're able to bring it back out. And that's a difficulty in getting point A. on Hanamura here, Hex, where it has to go perfectly, and it went well, not perfect.
Well, not a junk rush, but I guess we could call it an equalizer rush. You use your ults to force them to use ults so that you kind of level the playing field a little bit. So now they're on to similar advantages. Defense did have to use more, so it wasn't the purest of junk rushes, meaning you just go in and try to bait them into ults. You have to use ults to bait them into ults sometimes.
Taipei right now does have Dragon Blade up, has to back out, takes a little bit too much damage. Now looking to go back in, Dragon Blade at the ready. They did have Sound Bear queued up, but Jared goes down, which means that Renegades will probably have to hold off on expending too much here, but you never know. Nano Blade could be an option. They're not backing off, Hex.
No, they're just going to try to get some poke in to maybe go in. If they can get a pick, and I feel if they can get an equal fight, they might go in, knowing the reinforcements are just around the corner. Saipe still with that Dragon Blade he's holding in his pocket. He finds the Tracer, sniffs them out early too. They're stuck in a corner, but that's a beautiful sleep to start it off. Here comes the Blade.
The Blade is in. The Sound Barrier has been dropped. Jared rejoined the fight. 2 kills here from Renegades as they dive in. Blade versus Tac Visor. Blade is going to win. It's not fully clean here for the offense, but they only need 1 tick. The defense getting thrown off. Is Renegades going to get this cap here, Hex? It is looking very good as D.Va falls.
That charge off the point could cost them. Superplot goes for the charge, ends up dying, but his body off the point, a bad thing to begin with. A solid defense, though, despite eventually giving up the point, they were able to hold off the first momentum rush, which is always hugely important, and do only give it up with a $140 left on the clock.
And more to that point, that momentum rush was very close to succeeding. They had 2 ticks off of that. So for LG, coming back in that case did buy them a substantial amount of time. But now the question is, what are they going to run to break this point A defense of Renegades? And more importantly, what will we be seeing from the point A defense of Renegades, as it looks like they are probably just going to go with 1 builder. Double builder dream, not necessarily happening.
Yeah, my girl Symmetra can't get any love, even when she's really good in the game. She's got a shield. I mean, I could tell you all the positives of running Symmetra here, but it's also one of the points that it becomes a little bit difficult to get your teleporter or sound up in a position where you can keep it up the entire time. So I get it. I don't like it, but I get it.
Yeah, and I mean, for Renegades, it's a case where they have been using it to throw teams off, and maybe at this point they've run it so often that other teams will be expecting it and all the rest. I mean, you look at the LG setup here on offense, it is going to be very heavily divey. They're showing Winston, they're showing Pharah, they're showing Ube on Genji, and they're going to be just running in as quick as possible.
Well, we might see a Widow battle here, which would be great. We rarely see Widow battles nowadays at the highest of levels, but I don't think anything would point to Jesus getting off of the Widow based on the success he had on it. Icefeld also a pretty solid Widow of his own, too, so that would be a great matchup to see going. It reminds me of that 2-month period where everyone ran a Widow on both sides.
It's very high risk, high reward here, where if Jesus is able to win this Widow battle consistently, and as we say that, the other Widow goes away, Icefeld not running it, but Widow v Widow battles are very interesting in terms of the risk reward. Unfortunately, not going to be seeing it here, but we will be seeing a super highly aggro dive coming out here from LG.
All right, defensive Widow, double healers. It's kind of a very interesting comp. It's going to matter what Mangachu can do. A lot of it is can he get up Molten Core and have it level 2 at the same time as well. So it looks like, though, Luminosity probably going to rotate around left if they can, and mostly just ignore that turret. That seems to be where they're posturing up at least.
And Renegades will see if Jesus can make this defensive Widow work. Did have a beat on the Mercy, not able to commit early on, and now the surprise factor is gone. They know the Widowmaker is there. So let's see how he positions here. He's going for almost a flanking Widowmaker, just getting away from the main area where anyone would really want to dive. And at the very least, Hex, he'll draw someone back.
You know what's great about that turret is it lets him know where people are coming in from. It kind of gives him eyes that he doesn't have otherwise. So the turret starts shooting. He's going to get a couple shots in. Most of the kills have been on turrets so far, but Ube takes down an actual person, and Icefeld does as well. There is 1 kill from Jesus, but is it enough?
It maybe not enough right now, because really LG has been bleeding, Renegades has been bleeding people to start this fight right now, and thus Jesus is able to pick off Spree, but the positioning on the point right now is very rough for LG. They have to win the ground war. Now Icefeld has come back in, and we'll see just what he does here to maintain control of the point, but Jesus right now finally does find a Winston on. Will have to back out for now.
Yeah, Ube gets another kill onto Sherlocky. This fight in pure Luminosity fashion, taking a very long time to conclude. They still have people on it. Flock is going to get up. He's cleaving so much damage and very back and forth right now, though. There's a nice res.
Well, the res does come in from LG as they continue to apply pressure onto this point. They have 2 ticks here thus far. This means Renegades has to just throw their body onto it at this point or concede it and go for second. And with Spree coming in, getting that kill on Winston, this will be a relatively quick cap here for the LG side. And now look at this momentum, Hex. This could be a very fast point B cap.
Wholesale changes on the side of Renegades. Mangachu on the Mei off of the Torbjorn. Jesus not having great luck on Widow. Momentarily went to McCree, but he's going to go to a defensive Tracer instead. Juvenile will run a defensive Diva. So a little bit of interesting comp. A lot of wholesale changes, but those changes mean Luminosity is going to have a huge ultimate advantage.
Well, for LG, this is their best window to put on a big time bank advantage. This is their fight. They're going to have Sound Barrier into Dragon Blade. They won't have a nano boost, but this is giving Ube a lot of room to work with as he moves in. And Icefeld, of course, an X factor with wherever he puts that pulse bomb. So LG, they can take their time a little bit here, but when they engage, they have to know this is their best attempt.
Well, Mangachu's now on the McCree, just proving that they don't know who's going to run their McCree when they do, but Dragon Blade comes in right now. They do nano it as well, looking for targets.
Ube really not able to get on those targets early on. McCree diving off really gave him not the target he was looking for, and he ends up dying. So Ube getting very little done with that Dragon Blade, and this means the defensive Renegades much more likely to reestablish here, Hex. And that's unfortunate for LG. It was a golden opportunity, but if you use Dragon Blade and you have that much riding on it, and you get juked out by McCree leaping off a building, that's problematic.
Yeah, also wasn't even able to finish that kill as the Ana sought the Sanctuary of Spawn, and Tracer was able to clean that up as well. And now the advantage firmly in favor of Renegades. Mangachu still on that McCree. It looks like they want to rotate top right here. This is something that you will see most pro teams do, most high-level teams. If center didn't work, let's try top. If top didn't work, let's try left.
Well, this is where Mangachu's going to look to put them in the freezer and split them off, and he does just that. That is a good split early on in this fight. And now Renegades immediately capitalizing on it. They take effectively the 6v3 on top, and this is going to be a flawless team fight for Renegades, and it's really Mangachu's Ice Wall that made it that clean.
It's nearly impossible to push top when they're running a Mei like that. You have to try to juke them out and either go up the stairs or rotate left and then drop down, but it's very difficult to coordinate and do. Perhaps Jared can speed boost them one way or another, but knowing that there is a Mei on the field, they might just have to go center and try something, but I think left is nearly off limits now.
And now they do have a Graviton up, Hex, but how do you use this when you have to worry about half your team getting split out? Because there's not a great amount of efforts to get in here on top. I mean, you can go to the other side, but then you're not really easily following up on the Graviton. If you go straight up, you're going to get split off.
It's not terrible to rotate left here, then try to pull them off the ledge with the Graviton. They are going to try to go dead center, and there's a wall right in their face. There's a Tracer behind. Pulse Bomb's going to come in. Icefeld already down early in this fight.
Well, with Icefeld being down, they're definitely lacking in offensive power. Spree not able to see any good opportunities here to drop the Graviton, and now the question is, do you push it, look for a miracle, look for an early hook, or do you just wait for Icefeld to come back? And the safer choice is wait for Icefeld. Oh my goodness, Jesus, potentially considering going in on there, but decides against it.
Well, they have them in the corner. They keep trying to go here. I would rather rotate towards where Jesus is and try to throw that Graviton below the ledge, pull them off the door. Then you can rotate people up against the door, but right now, simply not dealing with anything, getting caught between a vice here.
This is really rough positioning here for LG. They're going to have to blow the Graviton sooner rather than later. They use the Sound Barrier, but no, Jesus goes a little bit too over aggro, gets hit by Ube, so now they have at least have a 6v5. This is going to let them muscle through the Ice Wall, and when Ice Wall is used, Mei is definitely a weaker hero in that time period, so now they have a 5v4 advantage, and Spree should have a good opportunity for a Graviton here. He's just waiting for his opportunity, and LG might have cracked the code here. They just need a little bit more, Hex.
Super patient. The Blizzard does come down, but there's a lot of damage. The grab comes in very late, perhaps unnecessary, but cleaning it up, they will get at least one tick. It looks like the Reinhardt's on the point trying to stall out those EP. Most of the kills coming from Spree.
Spree being very consistent here, 80% energy, really setting up most of LG here for these kills. And even though they've lost a few people, they have a strong presence on the point. They just can't lose anyone here, Hex, or they will lose their momentum, but it's not how his Icefeld with the Tac Visor on the high ground picks up 3. And LG very close now to taking this point and keeping the series going.
That's exactly where we want to be as Soldier 76 up top, overlooking the action. They banked most of their ults there, a couple kills and a little bit of perhaps overextension at a time from Renegades as they tried to vice them on the stairs, unable to clean up those kills.
Now let me ask you about a combo that you have there, because I think there is a little bit of anti-synergy. You're running Mangachu on the Mei. which means that you really just want to collapse on people as they move in and you split them off. But you have a conundrum there is that if you're running a very aggressive defensive tracer, which Jesus was, and you get picked off, suddenly the other team doesn't feel as bad about getting split off because they know they have a 6v5. Do you think a tracer should be that aggressive when you're having good success with your Mei?
It had been working, and I think you're right. In theory, that is correct. But they'd been putting themselves all in a clump. And as a tracer, when you have pulse bomb up every 10 seconds, you see that clump of people. She dropped 3 pulse bombs in there. A couple of them were mitigated by healing, and some of them just missed. But it had worked for the tracer several times before, as they were just huddled around the stairs. That I don't see why it wouldn't work the 3rd or 4th time. But I agree in theory of what you're saying. But blocking them off, they trapped them on the stairs several times.
True. And I'm just noting here, though, that one downside about that is that if you lose someone early on because of perhaps being a little bit over-aggressive, you have sort of defeated part of your own strategy. It's an interesting conundrum there because when that fight broke down, it did break down because Jesus got picked off early.
Right. Well, we do have another Torb on the field. Both teams favoring the defensive Torb. That seems to be the spot. They like their turrets as well. Mineral will be running that. Hadan, of course, will be the solo heal on this now, too. Compositions look very similar to the first round. Ube taking down Juvenile very early. Spells the end of this push already.
Well, Renegade's definitely looking for a highly aggro dive comp again, backed up by Jesus on Widowmaker, but when you lose 2 people in the first few seconds of a fight, that's definitely going to hurt your overall momentum. And remember, they don't have that much time here, X. They only have 1:12, so really, they have 2 more tries at this at best.
I really love this setup that they have right now, too. This is their anti-Widow setup, so that Icefeld can poke at her from a safe distance because they have the D.Va, and then when they pops up, D.Va goes there. But wow, taken down by a combination of a Pharah and a Genji. Icefeld down. 1 HP is Saipe. That pack's gone. Find another.
Well, the surprise Genji Wedgie definitely not helping Icefeld there at all.
Where are all these packs? He didn't get it.
He finally got a pack. He finally has health. He's been healed. But Renegade's now starting to get a little bit more onto that point. LG can definitely come back and push them back because there's 30 seconds left. They are respawning, but they've lost defensive positioning here. So Renegades, if Mangachu and Saipe, if between the 2 of them they can pick off 1 or 2 people early on here, that should be enough for this point. Early pulse bomb coming out for Juvenile, that connects. Down goes Super Fluke, and now Renegades with a real opportunity to finish off this point.
Yeah, Saipe's got tanks in his sights as they now have 4 kills. That is huge for them. It looks like they will get this point in rather short order here with maybe even some time on the clock.
Well, remember, they get an extra 30 seconds here, the first run around in overtime, so they're going to have a little bit more time to make the push on last. This is only 1 attempt. They only have time for 1 attempt, but Saipe pretty close to Dragon Blade, and you still have the X factor of a Widowmaker getting a pick, so Renegades does have a shot here, Hex.
What's really important, too, is that Widow has ult. Ult has been popped. Now everyone cannot hide. That's how he knows that Roadhog is around the corner, so really nice synergy there as they go in. Dragon Blade's about to be up, CP.
Saipe moving in, Dragon Blade being unleashed. Renegades all in right now because they have to be. They get the first kill in this fight. Saipe, not sated, finds Lucio. 3 unanswered kills from Renegades. Will they have the 4-point dream right here in Hanamura? It is looking good. They've only lost their Lucio here, Hex, as they swarm onto this point. Justice raining from above.
Yeah, this stall out game is going to be absolutely critical, but it does not look like it is favoring them at all. A nice kill from Hadan as he tries to do anything. 1 tick already passed. It looks like they will get 2 ticks. Can they get any kill or stall out here? I don't think so, ZP.
Well, 2 ticks, the count from Sesame Street. That's what I say about that. 1 tick, 2 tick, and they're very close right now. They just need to deal with the last few people stalling. Mei has fallen already. Jesus unaccounted for in the backline. Renegades in total control of this point right now, and I don't think that miracle kill is coming in right now, Hex. Renegades might very well bring it to 4 points.
They're not even looking for the kill, just looking to get them off the point so that they can finally finish it out, but they are being a nuisance. Jesus, I think this is the perfect time to run Widow on that point when everyone's trying to stall out and they're coming out 1 by 1.
Well, the other thing, too, for Widow is that it's high risk, high reward in the sense that you're either going to win very heavily because you're getting pickoffs or you're getting nothing. And when you only have 1 attempt, you might as well go for that bit of volatility, especially as you're coming in with a bit of momentum. So it worked out for Renegades, and now LG is in a very tough spot because think about this, Hex. They have 2 minutes, 2.5 minutes if they get first to get both points. And then, that doesn't even guarantee them a win here. That's simply to make it a draw. Renegades is in an incredibly strong position moving forward into this next round of overtime.
I could not agree more. Even if they get the first point, they're going to have 1 push at last. Now, obviously, it's not impossible because it's exactly what we just saw, but that is an outlier for sure.
Well, LG actually has more time than Renegades had. But knowing the history on Hanamura, you don't see teams get to second twice all that often, especially not with only 2 minutes. So throw aside the part that Renegades was unlikely to do it, because they did do it, and that's a reality that Luminosity has to deal with now.
It looks like the compositions will be what they ran around on the first time. Mangachu, of course, on the Torb. The Turd in a little bit of an interesting spot. I guess this is probably in reaction to knowing that Luminosity did rotate through that side on their very first attempt as well, so at least he'll have eyes on it. No Widow on the field as Jesus is opting to play the Tracer instead.
I think this is a case where, because they know they only have to defend both points for 2.5 minutes at the worst, they're just going for something that's a little bit more consistent and drawing down time. Widow is high risk, high reward. Tracer, a little bit more consistent overall and just delaying the enemy. So I like that change up here from Renegades.
Yeah, sacrificing kill potential for survivability, I definitely agree. That turret is down very early, but there's Jesus right away taking down Spree with a real kill as Pharah goes down immediately.
Pharah dying immediately, that's what Jesus was looking for. Now he will fall to Ube, and Ube now getting some work done in the back. 2 kills for him as he's unleashed, but the defense Renegades is probably okay with trading out here, just so long as they don't lose it decisively. They just need to burn time off the clock here. They don't even need to necessarily be the better team overall.
Well, they are losing a lot of players right now, but Spree seems a little bit indecisive as he's trying to come back. Saipe all the way back at spawn, but there is a rather strong contingent on the point for Renegades here. They are getting down to it. 1 minute left. What combos are we going to see coming up, ZP?
Well, what we're seeing here from LG, they're very close to getting a Dragon Blade up. They have a Pulse Bomb up and at the Ray. Not too much a combo with it, but still explosive individually. Mangachu still running back his Torb, I suppose, but look at Jesus. He's being a pest in the back. Was able to find Lucio, and the offense is still going to go back and look at him. Pulse Bomb in. Explodes Winston right away. And this is the delay that Renegades needs right now. It's not clean, but time now under a minute.
Well, they need to get down to this Mercy, too. They go deep dive for that Mercy being so evasive. Hidan finally going down, and that is Mangachu cleaning up Hidan and Ube. That could spell the last of it, but there is 20 seconds left. Not a ton to work with for Luminosity. Perhaps a Dragon Blade, maybe a res.
Here's the problem for LG. Even if this Dragon Blade is the best Dragon Blade ever, and they take first of it, you're not going to have it for second like Renegades did when they were going in, so this is problematic because now, yeah, you have to use this to take point A, and then you have to hope for some other miracle to take point B. We'll see how it works out here. LG, though, final attempt to keep up alive on Hanamura. They move in. Ube immediately taken down again by Inanna Sherlocki, dispatching him, and this should be a hold for Renegades.
It wasn't necessarily all over until Hidan went down. Mangachu hits the Molten Core and cleans it up. Who says Torb isn't viable? I'd say he's earned his worth here on this map. Wow. Dragon Blade for good measure.
Overtime fading quickly, and that is going to give us an even series here, Hex. 1-1, Renegade striking right back on Hanamura.
2-4.
Let's see what we end up here for our play of the game. Any guesses? Pulse Bombs?
Pulse Bomb's definitely a good candidate. Dragon Blade's also up there. Mangachu, though, did have a really nice multi-core play towards the end, so can we just get the Torb play of the game? I'd be ecstatic. Yeah, there it is. You drink whatever terrible substance that is, Torb.
Molten Core extremely strong is why, and every time we see a Torb on the field, we always wonder, can he get the Molten Core off in time? And not only having it off for him, because he gets all that health boost and the damage output, but that turret becomes nigh unkillable.
Certainly, and it worked out in the end. And it's interesting, too, because a lot of times people that are running something like a Torb wouldn't necessarily stay on it after dying when you feel the point is in trouble. Mangachu gambled. He just ran back as quick as his short, stubby little legs would bring him, got back onto the point, was able to use Molten Core, and it was a big reason as to why they were able to hold there.
Play the game, and maybe not like maybe the algorithm not 100% on that one, but definitely a play of the game at the very least there, and not only something you see from Torbjorn. Well, and we talked about him specifically and his proclivity for icicles and how, you know, he can do a lot of the same damage, and you know, you get the cliche like Torb play the game where he's just like off in the corner doing nothing, but he actually got a couple of kills there with his primary as well.
My all-time favorite Torb play of the game goes way back to when Overwatch was in beta. And it was on Hanamura, no less, where his turret gets the kills as he's dead, and his body just slowly ragdolls off the edge. I think it's one of the best play of the games I've ever seen. It was early, but I don't know if anything tops that.
Well, yeah, I mean, I've seen that video. I actually watch that video like daily when I'm to pick me up. It's one of the better videos of all time. But we talked about Mangachu's pool, and a lot of people look at Torb as like anyone can play Torb. The primary Torb weapon is insane damage.
Yes.
It headshots, it does a lot, and it's very difficult to master because it's got that fall off. It's got such a weird trajectory. It's unlike anything else, and I think Mangachu is one of the best ones at it.
He is, and it has a unique arc to it. So your average player, I mean, they might hit a few hits, but getting it consistently as Mangachu, it's difficult. I'd say the only player that comes to mind that has put more time than not into Torb, although we haven't seen as much recently, is Cool Matt on Fnatic. Used to have a pretty fearsome Torbjorn at points, but in general, players don't distinguish themselves too much with his primary fire, but it can be very deadly.
And it gives you something in your toolkit that can be surprising. That you how many teams are preparing for a strong enough Torbjorn like that? And what we saw actually a lot of interesting things this map from Mangachu and from them at large. Nate, I mean, we talked about the possibility of having the 3 threats, the triple threat. Well, they threw that completely out. They're like, everyone just pick someone that does damage. They had their main tank on Tracer there. And so walk us through what that did, because it actually, it had a lot to do with their victory, obviously getting that 4th point, but it actually played a huge part in getting onto the 2nd point.
Well, I think that versatility is Overwatch overall. Any versatility you can add to your team is massively underrated. Anyone who can having players who can play everything at a super high level, being able to roll onto a Widow like that, I think was actually absolutely game breaking, because Jesus' Widow went off.
Certainly, and you want to go back and talk about versatility in the scene as a whole. You look at a team like Envious, where a big part of the reason why they've had the success they had is that they switch from distinct composition to fit the situation probably better than most teams in the world right now. Now, I wouldn't say either of the two teams here were quite on that crazy level of swaps, but certainly Renegades is showing a good degree of versatility, and that's proven to be very effective for teams winning in Overwatch and getting favorable matchups.
I'm like writing down their comp when they were playing Jesus on that Widow, and I'm like, okay, so we got, interesting, Juveniles on Tracer. Oh, that's a good distraction. Oh, yeah, because Mangachu, now they've got multiple threats. And then I keep going, like, they also have Saipei on Genji. Like, who do they even have healing for them? What's going on here? And then we saw Bastion on that 2nd point. You maybe not like, don't like go home and play that necessarily, everyone, please. But it happened to work out in that one situation. I want to go back, though, to Hadan being really a staple in that back line, healing up. And he had some really good positioning on 2nd point. But I think a lot of what that dive comp really brought it to Luminosity in that regard is it made it real difficult for Hadan.
He is the linchpin of that team, and I think you don't necessarily have to kill the supports in a dive composition. You need to move them out of position to heal, and even just to burn out cooldown. So you saw pushing people back, and now you'll hear on comms, Ana sleep gone, right? The sleep dart's no longer an option, and that's the cue oftentimes to boost your own players in, to use your own ultimates that aren't going to be really negated by that sleep dart. So just the constant pressure on Hadan.
Well, the key thing to note there, too, is that Ana is great. She's incredibly highly versatile. She can damage as well as heal, but while she's damaging and defending herself, even if she wins the one-on-one, there is this brief void where you're not getting healing on your front line. So even at times where you do have the comical Genji going in on Ana and dying a terrible, terrible death, if the other parts of your team have done well in attacking the front line, you can still make a fight like that work despite that loss.
Yeah, more often than not, even when we saw those self-defense moments, we'd be pointing at each other being like, but meanwhile, look at the kill feed. But meanwhile, there's generally 3 or 4 deaths that are happening there.
Well, I mean, we saw some things that we expected from these teams, but we saw a lot of things that we didn't necessarily expect. And now we're at 1-1 in the series, coming into Game 3, and it guarantees us to be able to move on to that Game 4. And we do have the next map. It is going to be Nepal. What are we expecting from these teams coming into Nepal?
So Nepal, you think back to Mangachu's history, this is where he got really experimental on maps like Village. This is where we could see him come out on Bastion, though it's less in vogue nowadays. It used to be more common there. Certainly, if nothing else, we'd probably see Mei come into play, because teams that like playing Mei generally will run it on that particular stage. So Nepal does have its quirks as you go from stage to stage.
I think Icefeld will probably have a rather decent game. There's stages on this map, I believe Sanctum in particular, where 76s can really shine because of the artificial space created by that golf there too. And Icefeld not with maybe the best game, but I remember, you know, all those hours ago on Kings Row when he was just killing it on 76. So I'd expect Icefeld to be playing 76 at some of these stages.
Well, more than anything else, he's also just had a great day today thus far on the whole, especially going back to the first map. So at this point, it's probably better to think he's going to do well than not.
Right. And I would even say 76 on a couple of those points like Sanctum, but we've seen a lot of Tracer play on, I believe it's Temple, with the high ground in the middle, and I mean, we've seen him play it on that. Of course, with Luminosity, who knows who's going to play Tracer? We got a couple different options. You mentioned the May, multiple threats coming out here. I believe we're almost ready to go into this map number 3. I don't want to do predictions, but who do you think has the edge coming into this? I guess why do you think maybe Luminosity chose this map?
So for me, why LG chose Nepal, it's actually a little bit weird because I think with the curveballs that Renegades likes doing, I actually think this Renegades is totally okay with going Nepal. So based on history, I can't come up with a strong reason offhand.
I think I figured it out, is because it's probably so it's going to be control regardless, right?
Yes.
So it's of the controls. The other two controls are way better for Pharah. Ilios and Oasis are just monstrous for Pharah. And if Mangachu is going to be Mangachu, you know he's going to run the Pharah. Yeah. However, they did deal with this Pharah okay early on, but I would say that that's probably why. It's difficult. It's much more difficult to run Pharah on here, and given Mangachu's history wanting to run Pharah, maybe that's why they chose Nepal.
I didn't even think of that. That's probably the best answer I can come up with. And I actually really like the fact that we do have control here third. It kind of throws that into the mix because, as you mentioned, like, well, either of these teams would be willing to play on this. And it brings us into that potential game 4 and 5 with a kind of a momentum shaker, I think, in a lot of ways.
Well, we are guaranteed a map number 4 regardless here, so that means we will be seeing the first of Dorado or Gibraltar up after this. I'm certainly excited, but it does look like we should be getting started soon.
Yep, we'll go in. We are going into game right now. Call the action as it happens here on Nepal.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what stage we start off with, right? Because I think Nepal, almost more than any other map, is compositionally variant on stages a lot of the time. I think Village being an outlier. Of course, we talked about some of the things you can run on Sanctum as well.
Well, it does look like we will be opening up on the Village, and hang on here, Hex. We'll see if he sticks on this, but Mangachu, at least for now, is teasing everyone's favorite robot. And I don't know if I should say that because some people might go, I prefer Zenyatta. Well, for many people, Bastion.
But this is like Zenyatta's homeland. I mean, come on, smack in the face. This is his map anyway.
He's an outcast now.
I think you can say everyone's favorite robot, and we would assume it would be Bastion because that's how little Zenyatta we see lately, tragically, unfortunately.
Although, bear in mind, the bird actually pulls the strings. He's not a willing participant in this. The bird is the evil one.
Absolutely a popular fan theory for sure. I do believe we'll probably seeing both teams go top right here and then do the Braveheart, as I like to call it.
Unfortunately, Mangachu has swapped off onto the Pharah, but it's going to be Spree striking first blood on the Pharah first in this Pharah v Pharah matchup. And Spree raining rockets from above. He's already picked up 2, Genji and Winston respectively, but still back and forth between the two teams right now. Both down 2 early on. Mangachu still up and in it, is getting helped out by the Mercy, and as a result, he's picked up 3 and is slowly starting to push us back in favor of Renegades.
Somehow Renegades is able to, or actually Luminosity able to get a couple kills as our overlay. It does help us out eventually. You'd have to imagine, though, that if Renegades is able to take this point and successfully hold it, that someone on Luminosity has to go to deal with this combo, because right now they don't have the tools to deal with the Pharah and Mercy combination.
Well, First Cap is going to go the way of Renegades, but they don't have quite a dominant presence on the point right now. They still have everyone coming back in. Potentially an opportunity here for LG to get back in the quick attack, but they're waiting so long here, Hex, that it is going to give Renegades a chance to regroup.
Yeah, Renegade's just kind of poking around on the point. Jesus probably looking for a very aggressive one as the battle does begin again. Spree comes in over top, but not long for this world as Winston and Pharah team up on him.
Mangachu right now in over the top, pretty close to that barrage, but not going to get it. Immediately taken out by Icefeld, and this is where Icefeld can take over a game. on Tracer, low number situation, darting in and around. Numbers not really in his favor right now, but he's able to get on Saipe, and for now, not too much pressure on him, but he does get just a little bit too close to Juvenile, taken out, and that's going to let Renegades hold on for just a little bit more.
Yeah, just very low. Here comes the response finally from Luminosity to deal with the threat that is Mangachu and Shirlaki, who've been raining terror upon them. He will be the one to switch over to the 76, and everyone plays everything on Luminosity, apparently.
LG does not have very defined roles, but they do have versatile players. There's upsides and downsides up, but Justice raining from Mangachu in over the top only gets one. He's neutralized pretty quickly here as LG looks to bring this fight right back. But again, it's close as Saipe wins a Genji v Genji battle, and Renegades will be able to push things out here once more.
That is kind of the main thing of note here, is that they are winning their counterpart battles. They are taking Pharah v Pharah, they're taking Tracer v Tracer, and they are taking Genji v Genji right there. So on a purely mechanical and dueling level, Renegades is winning.
And for Renegades, they still have their war chest fully stocked here, just about. You take a look at the ult power they're going to have in the next fight. It's going to be hard for LG to take this unless Ube just has the Dragon Blade of the Gods, but already down Icefeld, that's going to make it rough. Ube, though, does bring out that Dragon Blade. Has nothing here just yet to show for it. Does finally get in the Saipe, but the rest of his team dying all around him, and Renegades will hold once more, and that's going to let them take the round.
They burned everything because the clock was running down, and I gotta say, I don't think Jesus died that game. If he did, it was very brief, and he was back alive. A constant nuisance in the back of Luminosity.
And one thing that's worth noting, too, is that Mangachu, of the two Pharahs, was way more supported than Spree was during that. And that's why, in that first fight, Renegades was able to turn that more to their advantage. I thought Spree had a great opening, but when Mangachu is getting pocketed the entire time, he had the time and space to pull that back in Renegade's favor.
Well, Spree perhaps made his name on Zarya, and he's going to queue up the Zarya right here instead, perhaps giving a little more support. No wholesale changes coming across. Icefeld will rotate over to 76. Ube is going to stay on the Genji, but I like that Genji a lot more now that he's going to have the support of his... All right, Ube switching to 76. Icefeld on to McCree. This is Luminosity Gaming at their finest.
Well, it is Luminosity Gaming. Finest might be too complimentary of a word to this just confusion as to who's running what, but Icefeld is going to be on that Cowboy early on right now, and Jesus does not care, just takes him out with some well-placed blinks and a flank. As Renegades, again, getting the better initiation on LG early on this fight. They haven't won it here just yet, but it is very likely with how pushed back LG is right now.
Mangachu continues to go untouched above, and there goes Hidan down there. It looks like Lucio is not long for this world either, as Jesus continues to do whatever he wants, donning the Cloak of Invisibility, cleaning up all of these kills. Extremely one-sided so far from Renegades here, and Luminosity doesn't seem to know the answer. I like this, though, ZP.
I do like this, and you take a look at the pressure from Renegades here and how they're running this. You have Mangachu throwing in poking rockets before they even get to the front. You have Jesus setting up a flank with a pulse bomb. They're not making it easy for LG to get a normal control point push where everyone goes in at the same time. What do you even go on? They're split up, but oh, Mangachu eats a sleep dart, immediately takes the dirt nap there. 5v5 between both teams, but you know what? Jesus is still alive and around, and the Pulse Bomb connects on the Lucio. He has been unchained.
In theory, the double hit scan that Luminosity is running should be effective against this, but Jesus has just tapped into something brand new right now. It has been a great week for Tracer play, I'd say, across the board, this tournament and others. That is just amazing. No answers for him, and at some point, I guess Icefeld's just going to try to duel him on Tracer.
Icefeld was thinking McCree would be the way to deal with it, but it hasn't really worked. And that's the problem with McCree at times, is that McCree's really good against Pharah, really good against Tracer, but if you're dealing with both at the same time, it can be rough. And also, you know, Saipe here in the wings as Genji, multiple threats here on this Renegades team that Luminosity has not dealt with. The Justice raining from above, Mangachu gonna fall. 5v4 opportunity here as Luminosity might finally be getting something going here next.
They finally get something going as the combo is at the very least taken down. Hidan will take down Ube, though, so turning into a bit of a scrappy affair. Saipe still now untouched. His just going to right-click his way to glory. Icefeld gets a kill late, but not enough. Still, even though taking down the combo early, you have to devote so much resources to take down that combo early. Everyone else from Renegades just ate Luminosity alive.
And Hex, it just feels like Renegades is playing out of their minds right now. They're getting contribution from every single player, and LG, even when they take out current threats, are not able to take out the other threats.
There are some games where it's not necessarily the composition this or the theory that, it's straight up mechanics. Ube is going to come in though with Attack Visor ZP.
Attack Visor, Nano Boost on the way, has 2 unanswered kills, make it 3. This will be an LG take unless Mangachu has some crazy heroics, not super likely, but look at this from the Renegades' perspective, Hex. This is totally fine. They only need one team fight to put this round away.
One team fight, and Luminosity did burn through a substantial portion of their ultimates, but Luminosity with finally getting some footing on control, which they have not had before. It looks like they don't necessarily have the perfect answer to Mangachu, but Icefeld playing on his comfort hero, known for his Tracer shenanigans, trying to outduel Jesus. We'll see which one gets the better bomb in this situation.
Well, he's going to have to show up with the bomb right now because two of his teammates are already gone. It's going to be up to him to swing this back in his favor. Graviton in. Pulse Bomb coming in for the Big Bang. Not going to do much of anything there. And this is rough for LG as Jesus is once again darting in and around. Icefeld under pressure, trying to count Mercy, and taken down by that Mercy Tracer combo as Renegades looking to be in prime position to take this round, be one round away from putting themselves up 2-1.
Well, the desperation will come in, not even get to the point on time. ZP, I think this composition is so effective because of all of the angles that all the damage is coming in from. You've got ground on Tracer, you've got every sort of access with Genji, and then Mangachu, the constant threat over the top.
The problem here is that they're dealing with threats, threats, threats. Unlike other compositions where you go back a patch or so where you had 4 tank and you know, all right, we kind of have to watch out for Roadhog hooks, nothing too explosive. Now it's a situation where there's a Tracer on one side, Fair on the other side, a Genji diving in. It's difficult to contain all of those in one consistent push, especially if you don't open up with an early pickoff.
Well, Mangachu trying to gain a lot of fans right now if he runs this, and you know, it may seem like it's a bit of a troll pick, but even given the 0% pick rate, this is the map we always saw Junkrat on. He can be very effective on the stairs.
Well, Apex stats eat your heart out because a Junkrat has arrived. And this is a good quarter for Junkrat. It breaks shields. It really hurts his spam. There's not too many ways of going. And Juvenile, he likes what he sees. He dives right in, gets on the Super Fluke. Early pickoff here for the side of Renegades, and that should allow them to get an early cap here on the Sanctum.
What year is this? 2016 Junkrat on Sanctum, but as you said, this was the stage he was always strong on, always able to really win that first battle. And this is a stage that the first battle will always take place on the stairs.
Right, and now look at how good Junkrat is at denying this opening choke where teams do try and brute force in. Brute forcing in versus Junkrat spam, possible, not necessarily good for your health, and it's just cool to see this in play once more. Nano boost in from the defense of Renegades, going to just defend this gateway even more. Now, they're not going to get much out of that, but it's buying them time.
It's not spam ZP, it is tactical area denial. Just a tad bit of spam as he is launching these balls all over the place, trying to keep them back. Also, the traps are a big effect too, so they're gonna make sure that they just back up a little bit, give up a little bit of ground, but now look at these ults on the ready for Renegades.
Renegades has all the tools they need to push LG back right now, and there's a Graviton early on here from Saipei. Gonna be pulling in at least 3. Do they have the follow through there? There's the Earth Shatter moving in from Juvenile, but they don't get it there. Icefeld on the flank. Tac Visor doing way more work. The supports getting drilled from the back line, and here comes the tire. We haven't seen too much tires in recent times, and it takes down 2. Explosive stuff from Mangachu, and we still have a fight.
I think people just don't even know what that voice line is. Fire in the what? I don't know what that is, but Icefeld made sure to take advantage of the high ground on the left side, now dueling the Trash Mouse as he took down Mineral.
Mangachu's still alive, the one person who did not die in that fight. Tire did work, he found Lucio towards the end, and Renegades coming right back. Now, defensive Graviton is out here from LG. Icefeld is there at the fall through, but this is still going the way of Renegades as they swarm onto the point, retake it, 70% Hex.
That's so much damage. He is just chunking it out, and he's going to be having another tire in short order as well at 86%. As you mentioned, 80% on the point, probably only one last good push for Luminosity. Some stuff to work with though, ZP.
They do have a few ultimates they can use in their favor, most notably Sound Barrier, which will let them get through this crazy amount of area denial and try and take this point. So I'd expect Mineral to initiate with this and Super Fluke to go as deep as he can to land that hammer. There's a Sound Barrier early on. Hook is going to come out here. Mangachu trying to get away. Whole Hog in on the way from LG, but Super Fluke is down. Didn't get as much as he wanted, but there's the fall through from Spree. Should let LG take this, but again, it's a rough situation. X have taken it, but now they have to hold it for the rest of the map.
Going to be very difficult to hold, but at least there is some hope left. Of course, this is the last stage too, so to avoid going down 2-1 in this series, Luminosity needs to hold this for the rest of the stage and then win a couple more as well. Mangachu, much to the chagrin of, I believe, everyone, now off of the Junkrat.
There's a
onto
reason
Roadhog.
for that. It's much harder for Junkrat to push in than to hold.
Right.
That's just the nature of the hero. So him going to Roadhog here makes all the sense in the world before he retake. And you look at that, Ube a little bit too far in, ends up dying. Icefeld trying to pull it back with the Pulse Bomb, gets on to Juvenile, flanking around the side, but this is not necessarily great here from LG. There's Spree, Graviton connects. Only going to get one as he gets knocked right on the ground by that Earthshire, but Jesus is still in the backline, still a threat. 3 kills here from Renegades here, Hex, and they are on the way to taking Nepal outright if they just get a little bit more.
There's not much left for Luminosity to even contest this point, despite losing Juvenile extremely early. They're just going to try to roll in here now, but it's not going to be enough. A victory dive off the edge? No, not quite, but that is going to be Renegades taking Nepal.
And Renegades coming back in strong form here on the last 2 maps. And I gotta say, if there was one player to praise here, Mangachu was great with the Junkrat for sure, but Jesus had some great moments both on Sanctum and the round prior on Gardens, or sorry, not Garden, but on Shrine. So honestly, very good Tracer play coming out.
Yeah, sure. Tracer's great. It was wonderful. Amazing. Rubbish Raccoon, Junkrat, Trash Mouse on the field. Everyone's got to be stoked about that. Everyone who's played a little bit of Junkrat. The tragic thing about Junkrat not being played is everyone who plays Overwatch, and you know, like people who play Overwatch, watch Overwatch, he's so fun to play. I've never met anyone who's like, I hate playing Junkrat. Of course you like playing Junkrat. The voice lines are fun. The traps are
Even
great.
if it's not all the time, you know,
Right.
it's like, yeah, I'll play some Junkrat.
So that was great to see. Mangachu just continues to show his expansive field. He is also he's always played Junkrat in the past for his team too.
Well, the other thing too, he's been the story on Renegades for
Right.
one reason or another. His deep hero pool is one, also the support he gets is another. But it's cool to see some of these older school strategies come out here. I always thought Junkrat on Sanctum was somewhat underrated, and it definitely worked out there versus LG.
Yeah, he's floating around roster lists for a long time. He's been through a lot of stuff. I think it was Grouchy Desperados, which became NG Red. Then he was on the brief Tempo Storm rosters, and then kind of in the ether, and then plucked by this Renegade squad, and he can play everything.
He was gone from the comp scene for a good
Yes.
3-4 months.
Right.
I mean, yeah, he was on the Tempo roster for a little bit, but that Tempo roster was not particularly good, so we didn't really see much of them. And you go back to NG Red, you have to go back to the summer of last year when they really had good results. So Mangachu is a player that's been around the scene for a while, but he hasn't really been a force in comp until just recently when he's joined this Renegade squad.
Right.
And I think right now the question that is in a lot of people's minds, certainly a lot of these other teams' minds, is how do you deal with the multiple threats coming out of Renegades? Because you'd mentioned, like, well, Mangachu's making all these plays and really, you know, earning a lot of fans in a lot of ways. But then you've got Jesus making plays as well and really having a huge impact on Tracer. And not to mention, I mean, they've got the Pharah threat. They've got so many tools in their arsenal.
I would say it's a bit of a paradigm shift because think about Overwatch really in the last little bit where what have you seen out of teams? You had 4 tank setups, which had a very different gameplay flow and how you work things. You were really more concerned with how do I land the big AoE team ultimate? How do I dodge the Roadhog? Now you have to position differently. You have to prioritize threats differently because they're coming at you from more angles in these more mobile and agile setups. And I think it can be handled. I just think the teams don't necessarily have the greatest amount of practice on it given recent events.
I think it's actually odd. I think the best way right now, until someone devises a better strategy, is fight fire with fire. That you have to run your own aggro, and you just have to win those duels. Because there was some times during those maps where I'm looking at it and I'm thinking, there's not a whole lot of analysis here. They're just playing really, really well. They're just out-tracking. They're just mechanically beating them.
The thing about Overwatch in any game in the FPS genre is that there's a lot to be said for strategy, tactics, and outpositioning, outflanking another player. But at some point, there are moments where you are simply better at clicking on people than the other team. Right. And you do get that a little bit more often when DPS heroes are in play by their very variable nature.
That said, I think that style of play lends itself to different maps differently. And so Luminosity, they were looking a lot stronger on King's Row where you can be a little bit more collected. You know, they had a little bit of a struggle as against the aggressive defense, but they ended up pulling out in the end. And actually, we do have the next map being Dorado, It was either Gibraltar or Dorado. Actually, both of these teams have a winning record on Dorado in 2017. So now are we wondering, well, is Luminosity going to try to rein things in a little bit more, play a little bit more, maybe play standard play, slow things down, and is that going to work?
I think it always helps to have smaller areas and smaller corridors, especially against these triple threats where there's the Genji and the Tracer, because now there's one flank path, and maybe a Tracer comes in, but you don't have to worry about a Genji behind you. Of course, the Pharah is the ever-looming presence, but the smaller the map, and we've seen this with other teams as well, other teams which struggle dealing with triple threats, that Dorado is actually pretty decent for it. It's controlled, there's chokes.
And going to Dorado here is really no surprise. You look at LG's history, they do very well on Dorado. They even give Immortals a rough time on Dorado, where arguably Dorado is Immortals' best map. So from a map selection standpoint, this makes a whole lot of sense for LG, and it's because they're just very familiar with the map. They have great engages on it, and they don't do it in the way that Renegades might do, or Renegades probably will be going more to fair play and all the rest. So both teams are good on Dorado here, but they do it in different ways.
Although, you know who used to see a lot of play on Dorado, hero-wise?
I know.
Who is that?
It's a little fellow named Junkrat. He's pretty good. And I believe that it will be defense first for Renegades. But Renegades has not been showing Junkrat on Dorado. They have been showing something a little bit interesting, though. And another hero that I like to see, of course, we've already seen Torb, but they will also run a Symmetra as well on Dorado on their defense. And we've seen them shut teams out.
Well, I know you've been disappointed in the lack of Symmetras being
Sim,
played, you know? And we've seen plenty of building, but not enough of those little laser turrets.
Yeah, I like every hero to get their day, right? I think that's when Overwatch is at its best. And so far, I mean, honestly, for a first day of a tournament, we've seen Junkrat, we've seen Bastion, there was some Zenyatta. I think one of the only heroes we haven't seen is Hanzo and Symmetra so far.
Have we not seen Symmetra?
No, we saw Verbo and Symmetra.
Okay, yeah, we saw
once.
Symmetra.
I was like going through this list in my head because at this point I'm like, well, anything's possible.
We haven't seen Sombra and Hanzo.
Well, I will say this, is that we did see some Bastion today, but post-patch, whenever that may be, probably going to be seeing a lot more of Bastion, for better or for worse, because he has been a terror in PTR scrims that we've seen. So, coming attractions.
Well, I'll tell you what, there's plenty more potential analysis to come here. I personally wouldn't be surprised to see Hanzo on this map, but I don't want to dive too deep in here because we are about to go live with game number 4. And right now, Luminosity, they're trying to tie it up going into bring it to game 5, that is. Here we are on Dorado. Take it away.
The streets of Dorado, Hex. This is, of course, one of the classic Overwatch maps. It was in the beta very early. And when you take a look at it, it's interesting because you have a very unique defensive posture here in the courtyard into a verticality aspect in the streets, and it's really let teams specialize on this map and come up with cool ways of going in on it.
Yeah, I do want to talk mostly about first point because given the defenses we've seen tonight, we might not see the rest of this map, but it is more so like a hybrid map than some of the other standard escort maps, as that first point feels like if you win the first point take, you're going to get that first point with the cart. So it does feel a little bit hybridy. Of course, last on Dorado can be absolutely impossible to take at times. Second, probably one of my favorite stages overall, given that high ground as we go there. But what makes Dorado's first so hard to push for the offense?
Well, what makes it hard to push for the offense is that unlike other maps where you can run, dive, and go straight in, you look at the geometry here in Dorado, it's rough to run an early dive. Sure, you can go up the stairs, but if the defense catches you coming up the stairs, you're in for a rough time. Now, speaking of defense here, Hex, the dream is real. We've been predicting it for a while, but double builder coming out here for Renegades.
It's very difficult to deal with. I think they have the right answers for it, and I think you can run a dive-ish composition, but you can't dive the center. I think we need to see teams go more over to the right side flank. They have both heroes who can do the right side flank, in Genji and Pharah. They need to come over the top. There's a lot of buildings that need to be destroyed.
And this is a case where you do have the double threat from the Pharah and the Genji, but if you run afoul of a turret in the wrong way, it's going to be rough. But Sim is in play, which means that pressure on LG here to make this first push a good one. And they already lose Hedan early on, so that's going to gum them up a little bit.
Not only did they lose Hedan, that's the last thing you want to see pushing into a Sim, is seeing Sim in the kill feed, getting that. Already at 50% now for Jur, who's going to have either a teleporter or a shield barrier. It has been really up to the Sim's choice whenever they get to that point. So already a really nice start for the double builder Renegades defense.
And again, they are running the Winston here, and Winston has to think a little bit harder about how you dive in on Dorado. It's It's not an easy in on the defense, and Renegades are more than willing to let LG come to them as they just pepper them with poke from long range. And Spree's trying to crack in here, but thus far, not getting as much done on this Pharah as he would like.
It took him very long just to kill the turret, too. It can be such a nuisance. Now it's time to deep dive, and they do go in. Beautiful kills from Spree, takes down both turrets immediately as they try to get rebuilt, but Hadan also takes down his opposing number in the heals, trying to bring back as the tanks for Renegades do get a couple kills.
And just like that, LG was able to see an opportunity and went in surgically. Multiple members diving at the same time in Spree. Every rocket on point, and this should be a first point cap here from LG. Very difficult to recover as a defense if you get taken out that decisively, especially as Sherlocky takes another one to the head.
They don't want to give it up. Jur is staying on the Symmetra. He is so close to getting a teleporter down, but he will be hunted down very likely, as that is exactly what the target they're looking for. Superclock takes on Juvenile in the meantime, so now just trickling onto the point. Very unlikely they will be able to stall this out, and now it is time to regroup and probably switch off of their builders.
Now, Hex, how much does this momentum mean going in the second here, where LG did that very cleanly, 4 ultimates up, soon to be 6? How big of an opportunity is this?
When you're going against double builder, if you can crack that first point, you know you're going to be facing 2 new heroes with 0 ult percentage. That's why Jur is over on the Lucio. Mangachu had to switch as well. So that taking that advantage from killing people that are going to have to switch heroes is absolutely huge. You got to ride this momentum.
So Spree right now getting poked down a little bit, but a big opportunity here for LG as they look to get in here in second. Icefeld already on in his sights. Going to throw the pulse bomb. Whiffs it right away. But Juvenile tries to overengage and gets punished horribly. Spree, Justice over the above, finds Jesus. 4v4 right now, so not the worst from Renegades, but Spree has been the problem they have not been able to deal with. And that's interesting given that LG you don't normally see as the Pharah-focused team, but Renegades getting a taste of their own medicine here.
But it is kind of the question now, do they have an answer to a very good Pharah? And this point is going to beg that question. Do they switch to a 76? Mangachu was already on that, didn't have great success against it. Do they need to add in a second hit scan?
Right now, it would definitely help because Spree has been doing whatever he wants. LG, they did have to burn a decent amount of ultimates to get it to the point that they've gotten it to now. But Spree finds Sherlocky again. Sherlocky has been eating rocket after rocket all game long. Saipe, Graviton comes out on the defense, but Ube on the flank. Dragon Blade out. Will take down Saipe. Still looking for more. As Luminosity, it's a brawl on the cart right now. Hack says Mangachu might be able to secure it with the Tac Visor.
Looks like they will finally be able to secure their defense. That was the most Luminosity fight ever. It went on for about 5 minutes and they traded back and forth forever. Very good progress, though. Not quite progress enough where you can not push at this point, though. Not going to go to the right flank, going to go down center again.
Well, Spree, despite all the success he was having, he has gone off the Pharah and gone on the 76, and he catches Jesus off guard, but Mangachu just catches him off guard. A little bit of fair play there as it goes back and forth. So with winning that 76 battle, this isn't bad for Renegades. The dive, though, from LG coming in.
Trying to deal with Mangachu. They do bully them back into the point, but Juvenile with a couple of kills in the backline. That is both supports. Losing both of anything signals the end of a fight, in my opinion. Supports, tanks, DPS, and a nice little helix for good measure onto Ube.
Well, it's interesting. Mangachu has sort of carved out a high ground position for himself here where he's not really being challenged. He's just got 2 free kills in over the top with helixes, so we'll see how this works out, but it does feel like LG has lost a lot of their momentum here, and they're switching up heavily again to a degree where you wonder if they really planned for this sort of defense.
Still running a dive-ish composition. I think we should maybe take an eye on Superpluke, see what he's going to go after, what his target is. Icefeld trying to get in position up top. They know they have to take these stairs back.
Well, they're certainly trying on it. Saipe, though, defensive Genji picking up 2 early on here. And this, for Renegades, again, they have reestablished. They have their multiple threats up once more, and it's not even Mangachu this time. It's Saipe just diving to the back, ends up with 3 before it's all said and done. Icefeld struggling against the wave of inevitability here, as he's just going to have to back out and doesn't even get to throw himself off those cliffs.
While we have a reset here, what do you think of seeing all these Tracers go after Lucios? To me, I feel like it's taking them way too long, and oftentimes they don't get the kill, they get collapsed on and die. Do you just ignore Lucios at some point?
It's hard to say. I mean, if your tracking is on point and you don't get moved back, you can immediately eliminate Lucian. Again, the Mangachu getting free kill after free kill from this high ground. This needs to stop. LG is not respecting him at all. And to your point, It depends on the Lucio and how well a Tracer is playing, but right now it has not been a good day for Tracer v Lucio.
Well, the time to kill has been way too long in a lot of these situations, and they're spending 5 to 10 seconds trying to take down Lucios, and while the fight goes on around them is why I bring up the question, but loaded for bear are both of these teams in this next fight. A little bit stronger is Renegades, but it very likely could be the decisive fight of this point.
And for LG, they do have a decent amount saved up for this, but they're going to have to burn it all in attempt to get the third. And look at this. They're going on Mangachu with Winston, but he gets slapped! He gets slapped, and now he does get woken up. He's back in on it. That was probably not great. No, Mangachu lucky not to fall off the edge. Meanwhile, Ube getting work done on the other side. Dragon Blade onto Winston. 2 kills here from LG. Mangachu still under pressure by this Winston that just will not go away. But Saipe, Dragon Blade, late in the fight, finds on the Lucio, and Renegades could still bring this back despite that early pressure.
Really early kills from Luminosity were going to have the fight in their favor, but still unable to kill Mangachu. The battle has been going on for a very long time. Spree's going to pop his own tac visor, trying to deal with Mangachu. Finally does get punched and killed by a Primal Raged Winston, though. Fight so back and forth, CP.
This is very back and forth, but this is LG fighting for their lives to bring this to third, to increase their odds of keeping the series going. They dropped the beat. They're moving in still. But it's Jesus versus Icefeld here. Jesus still in and around, stalling out the Scarred and Tracer. Winston going to be zoning him out a bit, but respawns for Renegades are coming in right now, Hex, in what has been an incredibly long fight. But Lucio going down as Jesus is still untouched.
Jesus finally puts a clip in the head of Lucio there, puts him down. Jesus able to take down Super Block as well. It is all in favor of Renegades as their hit scan come alive, combined for 4, Jur for good measure, and they do stop Luminosity before they're able to take the second point.
For Renegades now, we've seen this movie before where they've had a really good defense on a payload map, and then we go, wow, they're in a great position, and then they get full held at first. So I don't want to necessarily repeat what we were mentioning at Kings Row, but on the same note, historically, this is a really good position to be in Dorado. The question is, will they be able to beat the first point defense of LG?
And very long, drawn-out fights. I know we were talking about Luminosity yesterday, just as we were preparing this, and how Luminosity, they fight longer than any other team. It seems like they fight from beginning to end. They're not necessarily decisive fights, and sometimes that's to their benefit, sometimes that's to their disadvantage.
So one thing I do want to ask you, Hex, before we get too far removed from it there, is that in that final fight, Mangachu got dove on immediately. But it was just a Winston. He didn't have a whole lot of support going in on him. I feel like if there was anyone else with that Winston, Mangachu would have gone down relatively quickly there. Do you think it was a mistake to only allocate Winston to that particular dive?
Well, I think you make the good point just with your verbiage use. He got dove by the Winston, so it's not a dive comp. It is, guys, let's go dive. It's, oh, I dove and died. Because they're only going in one at a time. They need to throw someone else there with them and just not the support. And that's been kind of a trend we've seen all day, where some of these dive compositions, you're running the heroes, you're running all the recipes, but you're not putting it together for its meal.
And that's very true, because again, you take a look at that, Mangachu was just running around there, just getting electrocuted the entire time, but apparently he liked it because, you know what, he ended up living, got back into the fight, and was a big part for why Renegades ended up holding there at second.
Jesus queuing up, for the moment at least, on an offensive Widowmaker, and any other time I'd say probably gonna switch off, but given Jesus' Widowmaker tonight, this used to be Widow's playground, Dorado.
Well, and there's a reason for that. You think about even Widow on defense where you can get on that back archway. There's not that many heroes that can easily get in on her. And even if you do, it's an investment. And already, though, Juvenile a little bit too far out, immediately getting punished by Super Fluke. So they're going to have to wait for Winston to come back in here in this case. But I'm really interested to see what Jesus will do Widow-wise. But as I say that, I'm never going to get an answer. He's going to Tracer instead.
He does switch off. Mangachu just getting the poke now as he's got damage boost on the left side, aptly dodging that hook there. They know they're going into a Symmetra, so that is kind of on their mind that they only have a few fights to do so before teleporters up.
Mangachu right now going in. This is very reminiscent of what Spree did on the last round. Diving in on the back, trying to get Symmetra. Symmetra getting saved at the last moment, but no, will go down. But they invest a lot into that there, Hex. That is effectively the entire Renegades offense just to take down Sim. Definitely not worth it.
Definitely not worth at all, as the ultimate advantage should be shifting over to Luminosity now, given all of those kills. Mineral still at 63%, though. Not unfeasible to think that he would be able to get his charge up during this next fight anyway, as he will rejoin the fray. So Mangachu still on that Pharah, looking for those picks. Jesus and Saipe, again, they're running this very aggressive composition.
They are, and we'll see how long they stay on it if this next fight does not have the results they're looking for. But for now, LG very confident in just staying here in the back in this defensive Dorado posture. And look at how far back Icefeld is. He's not even giving an easy entry as he takes down Saipe early on, gets on the Mangachu. Icefeld is the problem once more.
He's been great on his 76 all night, able to take down that Pharah. Beautiful splash damage on his Helix Rocket to take down Jesus, and this allows Mineral time to get his ultimate up. Ultimate's definitely in favor of Luminosity Gaming.
When do you switch here, Hex, if you are Renegades? Because teams have been really poor at swapping until they only have a minute left. Well, now they only have 2 minutes left, and they're still committing to this. Are they just all in at this point?
I believe they are, and one knock that I will put on Mangachu, despite all of the praise I have lofted on him, he can be a bit stubborn as far as switching heroes. So he's on the Pharah now, 88%. You have to imagine if the Barrage doesn't go well, I think they're going to give it, just probably stay on the rest of the time. They have a res up too.
Well, they have the shield generator up here. They're not for the defense. They don't have a teleporter, so kills matter, but it's going to be much harder for the offense to get those kills because a soldier with 275 HP is a terror, and LG, nothing even crazier, just solid mechanical play, aided by that shield generator, and Renegades now, are they going to have Deja Vu repeat itself as they just, Jesus, way in the backfield?
Well, Hidan went down, but they did have a second healer up in that shield gem before Jesus killed that. Jesus then camps out, waits for Hidan. There is no healing on the front line as Jesus remains in the back.
This is competitive pub strategy 101, but the Anas have this fight. They've created their own 6v5. Mangachu with the justice raining from above. This gambit has worked out, at least for now. The res does come in, and we'll see if Renegades can keep up the mountain of Saipe. Blade up. Luminosity coming back in, trying to keep this going, but it's an innovative setup here by Renegades that Hex might have just cracked this first point.
Luke finally goes down, but all the kills have been in favor of Luminosity as that duel comes down from Saipe. He's playing a great Genji right now as he looks to clean up the remainder of this. He does. Dash resets for days as he takes down both Icefeld and Hidan. Jesus takes down his counterpoint in Ube as they clean that up, and now just pressing forward, trying to get a little bit more charge will be Saipe already taking control of this high ground.
And for Renegades, their backs were against the wall, Hex, and now they have 3 minutes to go through second. It's a decent amount of time, but it doesn't leave as much room for error as you might think. It's going to be very beneficial for them to use this sound barrier to their advantage while LG is effectively knocked down a bit and try and at least get it right to the last point here on second.
Both teams will rotate into a combo play of Pharah and Mercy, Hidan and Ube for Luminosity. But here comes the sound barrier as Saipe is trying to get even more damage done on his Genji.
Well, they use that sound barrier. It's a very good effect, Hex. They end up with 2 early on. They do lose Sherlocky in the back. Icefeld able to take down that support, but he's doing this short-handed now as the rest of Renegades is moving forward into the remnants of LG. And LG, they're not going to be able to sustain here, and this is going to mean that Renegades is 1 fight away, Hex, from taking their first series in the Overwatch Carbon series.
They know they're in trouble as Ube does switch off to McCree. They do not have an answer for Jesus on this Widow, though. They accidentally blind picked a Mercy combo into this Widow, which did not work out well for him. Jesus looking to do the yeoman's work and get them pushed out on this Widow to secure this second point.
And Jesus right now just looking for Icefeld. That is his main target, but he's going to get a Winston right in his face. Not what you want early on. Meanwhile, Icefeld, attack visor blown, doesn't have to worry about the Widow. The Widow's under pressure. Finds Lucio early on in this fight, but we have a Dragon Blade out and on the way. We'll see here, Saipe moving in, looking for his opportunity. Down goes Hidan. 3 kills here from Renegades, and Hex, they are on the verge of doing the Saipe. Dragon Blade of his own, moving in, finds 1. Will he pick up the double? Doesn't do it here just yet, but everything going the way of Renegades as this card does not stop.
Well, sure luck, he got the resurrection in there earlier on, and you could tell how important Icefeld knew that was as he tried a risky mid-air Helix Rocket to take down that Mercy, unable to do so. Since then, it has been all Renegades. They are so close to filling up that yellow box of victories, EP, almost have it.
LG right now stalling for their lives. They are fighting for it. They have to get a pick now or never here, Hex, and it is not happening right now. They lose Hidan. They're not going to be able to sustain. Juvenile mopping things up with that Tesla cannon. Has the triple kill here on Winston. It is all hands on deck for LG, and they are getting thrown aside. Victory sound barrier on verge here for Renegades. Justice rating from above as Mangachu and the Renegades win Dorado and take the series.
Jesus is running that Widow, and he gets a gift that they switch onto the combo. They switch onto Pharah Mercy blindly because they didn't know he was switching onto Widow. That was just everyone after first point was taken. Both teams decided, let's run this, let's run that. And then Jesus, maybe he didn't show up a lot in the kill feed, but changes the scope of the battlefield. Mangachu, play of the game.
I gotta say, it's a little bit weird to have both teams put out that early. That's one of the only times I've ever seen the winning team only have 3 people. Usually it's a losing team that makes the exit stage left. That's really what's going out to be. It's a great play of the game, but
Well, that was
my
that.
goodness.
That was actually that moment we were talking about where the Winston came up on him several times and
Yep.
was unable to do it. Like they even slept. The Winston goes down, but like that was a pivotal point of the game, regardless.
Well, again, just imagine if the Winston had a buddy there, it would have been a quick 76 kill, and that's not play of the game.
Right.
Well, and I think maybe what they were going for with that is just distract him for a while. If we send one over there, because a couple of times, I think the first time he dove back there, they had Sherlocki as well. And so if you can just distract those two on the back, maybe now you've got a 5v4 on the front and you can do something with that. But that was also not happening. You've had Jesus and Saipai on the front getting kills for the team. And so they were losing both fights because, as you could see, that Winston was not having a good time on the front. Well, I mean, another amazing match with some interesting play. I had written down at the end of the first point, if we harken back to the beginning of that map, I was like, this is why Luminosity picks this map. And they have a very strong showing on that first point. And with that choke, it's very defensible, but Luminosity does seem to have a way of cracking it. And, you know, they pushed the cart pretty far onto the second, and that's where it all fell apart.
What I liked about Luminosity's offense was the quickness in which they decided to go in.
Yes.
They were poking. They saw one brief window opening, and they all went in. They made the decision, and that's what cracked that point for them.
It was poetry in motion.
Yes.
Straight up. Because at first it looked like it wasn't really all that great. I mean, Spree wasn't getting that much out the poking. But then there's just that brief moment of time where they said, we think we can do this. We think they're a little bit out of position. And they all go in at the same time. And Spree lands just about every rocket. That was beautiful from LG, and one of the better Dorado first takes you're going to see. But then what do you see on second, where they get stopped and then they're just swapping from hero to hero, almost looking like they don't know what to do in that situation, which is weird because they do have a very good record on Dorado overall. I just feel like LG maybe outthinks themselves sometimes with how much they swap.
I completely agree with you. I think that is the small difference between these teams where you have three people who can play a lot of DPS. But it does seem as though Renegades knows this is my pool of DPS, that's your pool of DPS, and sometimes they overlap, but minimally, whereas Luminosity, they're thinking, we are all DPS. Whoever wants to play Pharah this time, whoever wants to play 76, and it's a little bit discoordinated, and I think they might be better served to lock those roles down.
And I think that right now we're also seeing potentially the map pool just not favoring them because they were strong on King's Row. But even that, though, it was pretty close. And then as soon as the fights became more scrappy in a little bit more open territory, they didn't find any strength. And so they win first, lose 3 in a row, and Renegades coming out very strong. So I guess taking a step back, if you're other teams, what are you thinking looking at these teams?
Well, just taking a large step back, I think every team we have in this tournament is super close. And I was actually not expecting that coming into today. So I'm extremely surprised. Even though the 3-0 happens, that's a paper 3-0. That's not a visual 3-0. You know, these teams are extremely close, and I think it's going to be a heck of a battle over the next several weeks.
Well, I think clearly we see certain traits that different teams favor here, right? Where if you're a team that's going up against Renegades in the future, you definitely need to have an answer for Pharah because you know it's a key part of their game plan. Complexity, I'm not saying anything here, but if you're a team, Complexity, you definitely need to have an answer for Pharah. I'm trying to get something out here because they've had a terrible track record with Pharah. Meanwhile, certainly you take a look at LG, you're going to need to get on the back line and deal with Icefeld, particularly on maps like King's Row. Maybe don't even bring them to King's Row if you can avoid it because of how well they seem to play that initial defense. And bear in mind, you do have more map choice in this tournament here, so you can see if a team is really strong on those opening 3 payload maps, maybe just don't bring them there.
And these teams will have to play each other again, but the other teams will be the home teams, giving them the first map pick advantage too. So that is something to keep in mind as the tournament goes forward.
We didn't see any Hollywood today, by the way.
I know.
Yeah.
No sunshine in my life.
No sunshine in your life. I mean, do you think that this is going to be a trend? Are teams shying away from Hollywood now, or was it really just the teams that first picked this this today doing their first picks?
Well, it was very weird that Complexity did not go to Hollywood just because of the fact that they have such a good track record on that map specifically. So they weren't even respecting their own history. It kind of reminds me of old school Reunited where they had an insane win rate on Nambani and then they just didn't go to it the way you would expect.
Yeah, and not only that, but Immortals, actually, it's one that they have struggled on here
Yes.
and there, especially on second, notably. But yeah, definitely a curious pick. I would assume that there's some backstory there potentially with how scrims have been going. Well, honestly, day one is over. Have we learned anything? Yeah, we've learned one thing. We learned that the teams are closer than maybe we expected. We've definitely seen a lot more hero picks than we expected. And knowing that a patch is coming down the line at some point, what have we learned that we can maybe take into that?
So what we've learned to begin with here is that Immortals is definitely still a very strong team where even though Complexity did, I won't even say shock them in a sense. I mean, there was a 3-0, but Complexity fought them a little bit harder than expected. Immortals still looked very scary as one of the front runners in this tournament. Complexity, on the other hand, you take a look at them, you realize that they are going to have trouble transitioning. I think what we saw from Complexity's offense today was very worrying. They didn't really seem to be on the same page, and yet, on the same note, what we saw from their defense was promising. So hope isn't lost for Complexity, as some people might have thought, but they do have certain issues that they need to work out as the tournament goes forward.
In the same vein, I will say Complexity is not going to be the easy out that I thought they would be. Not to say anything against those guys, but you're replacing both tanks. You're replacing both tanks on extreme.
Oh, is that a big deal?
Yeah, on extremely short notice. Yeah. So much so that, like I said, we didn't even know exactly who they were going to run today. And secondly, I would just say overall that if someone picks Junkrat on your team when you're laddering, just let him play. Let him play. It's completely viable, and Mangachu just continues to show that you can play anything, even at the highest levels.
Well, along that vein, then, I think we can still say definitively that if somebody picks a Hanzo, you need to rage against them because it wasn't played today. So therefore, it must be a bad pick, right?
Oh,
okay, we'll just leave that where it is. Well, let's actually take a moment to look at the standings if we can. There hasn't been much that's changed since then, but really at this point, we have two people on top and two teams on bottom. So Immortals with 1 win now, and then of course we have Renegades coming out on top. In which case, let's actually take a look at the schedule because that might give us a little bit more indication as to what we're going to be seeing. We've got 2 teams playing tomorrow that we didn't see at all tonight, and they are going to be playing in Game 1, Hammers versus Team Liquid. And then, interestingly enough, we're going to be seeing Immortals face off against Luminosity. And I guess any expectations coming into tomorrow?
Well, there's very recent history where Hammers beat Team Liquid in previous tournament, and Hammers is looking like they have all the components of being a world-beating, world-class team, even post-patch, which was their enormous question. So I would expect that to be, and that kind of goes back to my initial theme of it could be a changing of the guard tournament. Well, Liquid's been around forever, Hammers on the come-up.
We need to see where Hammers can grow. Obviously, Team Liquid is working through some demons right now. They are doing roster changes, but Hammers specifically, you take a look at the EFRAG tournament that just happened the other day, they didn't come out as the incredible juggernauts that they were in the monthly melee a little bit before that. So Hammers has the potential to be a top team in the scene, but this is a proving grounds for them. If they can come in through the Overwatch Carbon series and win it all, suddenly you really have to like their chances going forward, but if they get figured out and they end up middle of the pack, then it's much less exciting. So I think there's question marks right now with Hammers that still need to be answered.
Yeah, because, I mean, we're going out of the 4-tank meta, which was very strong for them. And this is really the story of the scene right now, is how can you adapt to the changing meta? Because when you look long-term, you can throw together a team that is going to succeed in this meta right now. But as you're going into the Overwatch League, where potentially things could change, and there's going to be season upon season, and orgs are going to be looking for the team, the roster, that's going to be able to win consistently over time, you have to show that. And this is a great opportunity.
The best teams in Overwatch are teams that can adjust meta to meta to meta, and that has been, as you mentioned, envious at previous times. I think of teams like Rogue and even Misfits who are not in the region, but the teams that consistently, it doesn't matter what heroes are good and what heroes are bad, they're just good players. And those are the teams that are consistently good in Overwatch.
No doubt about it.
Well, you know what? There is still more Overwatch to be played. Not tonight, not for us anyway. But we will be back tomorrow. So tune in at 5 p.m. Pacific time. The stream goes live. And, of course, we will be live at 5:15 Pacific for Hammers versus Team Liquid. Any closing thoughts, final thoughts for our audience?
Nope, just catching my breath being up here in Denver. I didn't have to use. I have an oxygen tank down here. I didn't even have to use it.
The thin air gets to us all, but really, I think we covered most of it going in there, and I'm just excited to see both what Hammers brings tomorrow and Team Liquid. They have been struggling, but we'll see if their roster changes will bear some fruit.
All right, well, you heard it here. We'll see you all tomorrow, and I hope competitive treats you well in the meantime. And talk to you all soon, hopefully.
Graviton comes in, sets up Jesus, and
The Fury that, it's straight up mechanics. Ube's going to come in though with attack visors.
Attack Visor, Nano Boost on the way, has 2 on it.
Finds Hidan in the backline, and we mentioned that can be
Sponge will be coming in soon. And oh, what a shot. Offense is still going to go back and look at. Pulse Bomb time.
we see a Torb on the field. We always wonder, can he get the Molten Core off in time? And not only has that
Moving in, Dragon Blade being unleashed. Renegades all in right now because they have to be. They get the first kill in this fight.